Imagine this. One moment, your world is a warm, golden embrace. The next, it shatters into a million icy shards, leaving you exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. That's where my story begins, not with a gentle whisper, but with a brutal shove into the unforgiving night. I remember the biting wind, the relentless rain, and the sickening thud of a door slamming shut, sealing away everything I thought was mine. My mother, my beautiful, strong black mother, still bleeding from bringing life into this world, clutching my newborn twin brothers to her chest, was cast out like refuse. Homeless, heartbroken, with nowhere to turn, she stumbled into the darkness, while the man who swore to protect her stood in the doorway, laughing with his mistress. Can you feel that knot in your stomach? That primal fear of abandonment, of betrayal so profound, it rips your soul apart? This isn't just a story about a woman scorned. It's about the deep spiritual wound of injustice, the kind that makes you question everything you believe about love and family. But what if, in that very moment of absolute despair, a hidden truth began to unfurl? A truth so powerful, so meticulously planned, that it would not only reclaim what was lost, but redefine the very meaning of power and legacy. What if the man who thought he had everything was about to discover he had absolutely nothing, and the woman he discarded was merely a pawn in a game far grander than he could ever comprehend? The night my world fractured, I was barely old enough to understand the full weight of what was happening, but old enough to feel the cold seep into my bones, a chill that had nothing to do with the rain lashing down on us. I was there, a silent witness, a small shadow clinging to my mother's soaked nightgown, my own heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her hip. My twin brothers, barely 3 days old, whimpered softly, their tiny cries swallowed by the storm, their fragile bodies pressed against my mother's still healing chest. The mansion, a fortress of golden light and warmth just moments before, now loomed behind us, a mocking beacon of everything we had lost. It felt like a cruel joke, a scene ripped from a nightmare, yet it was terrifyingly real. My mother, a woman of immense grace and quiet strength, stood barefoot on the cold marble steps, her dignity battered but not broken, even as the man she loved, Marcus, sneered from the doorway. His voice, usually smooth and charming, was now a flat, mechanical drone, devoid of any human warmth. "You're dead weight, Clara. Leave." He stood framed by 2 hulking security guards, his eyes empty, like polished stones. Or perhaps, I thought even then, they had always been empty, and we, in our love and trust, had simply been too blind to see. My mother's plea was a raw, desperate whisper. "Marcus, please. The twins are only 3 days old. Just let us stay until morning, please." But he didn't even blink. His gaze was fixed somewhere beyond us, as if we were already erased from his reality. Behind him, a figure emerged from the opulent shadows. Vanessa. She was his assistant, his confidant, the convenient excuse for his late nights and frequent business trips. She wore my mother's silk robe, the very one Marcus had given her last Christmas. A cruel twist of the knife. Vanessa's smile was slow, predatory, a triumphant smirk that spoke of a long-awaited victory. "This is awkward," she purred, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Maybe you should have been more useful." My mother's hands tightened around my brothers, one of them letting out a tiny, vulnerable sound that pierced through the relentless rain. I could feel her trembling, not from cold, but from a profound, agonizing mix of pain and disbelief. She wanted to scream, to fight, to demand answers, but her body, still recovering from the C-section, was a battlefield of pulling stitches and exhaustion. There was no strength left for rage, only for survival. "I gave you everything," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. 6 years, Marcus. 6 years of my life. And what did I get?" Marcus stepped forward, his face contorted with a venomous contempt that made my young heart clench. A wife who couldn't even manage a simple dinner party without embarrassing me. A wife whose family had nothing to offer. "You were charity, Clara. I married you out of pity." The words landed like physical blows, each one a hammer strike to her already shattered spirit. My mother stumbled back, her bare feet slipping on the wet stone, but she caught herself, adjusting the twins, forcing herself to breathe. In that moment, a faint echo of my grandmother's voice, a lesson learned in childhood, seemed to whisper through the storm. When they think you're broken, that's when you watch. That's when you learn. That's when you prepare. A flicker of something, cold and resolute, ignited in my mother's eyes. "Fine," she said, her voice steadying, a surprising strength emerging from the depths of her despair. "I'll go." She turned and began to walk down the steps, each step an agony, each one measured, deliberate. The small suitcase in her free hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Behind us, Vanessa's high, cruel laugh echoed. "Look at her, Marcus. She's not even going to fight." Marcus said nothing. The heavy oak door closed with a resounding thud, extinguishing the golden light, leaving us in the oppressive darkness. We reached the ornate iron gate, the boundary between our past and an unknown, terrifying future. The street stretched out before us, empty and dark, swallowed by the pouring rain. My brothers began to cry, a piercing wail that cut through the night. Then the other joined in, their tiny voices small and desperate. My mother rocked them gently, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Mama's got you. Mama's got you." I didn't know if she was lying, if she truly believed it herself. We had nowhere to go. No family, no money. Her phone, our only link to the outside world, had a mere 3% battery left. Her body screamed for rest, for warmth, for solace. Just as despair threatened to consume us entirely, her phone buzzed. Once, twice. She shifted my brothers, pulled the phone from her pocket, and stared at the screen. A message from an unknown number. My father prepared for this. My breath caught in my throat. My father. He had been dead for 8 years, taken by a sudden heart attack before I could truly know him, before my mother could say a proper goodbye. What kind of sick joke was this? Another message appeared. Open the attachment. Trust no one. Wait. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the screen. A video file loaded, slow and grainy. Then his face appeared. My father, older than I remembered, thinner, but unmistakably him. His eyes were sharp, focused, burning with something I had never seen before. "Clara," his voice crackled through the phone speaker. "If you're watching this, it means everything I feared has happened. It means Marcus has shown his true nature, and it means you're alone." Tears blurred my vision. My mother pressed the phone closer, as if she could reach through the screen and touch him, feel his presence. "I knew this might happen," my father continued, his voice steady, resolute. "I saw the way he looked at you, the way he looked at your mother and me, like we were beneath him, like you were a stepping stone. So I prepared. Everything you need is waiting. The mansion you just left, it's yours. The accounts he's been using, they're yours. Every dollar he spent, every lie he's told, every bit of security he thinks he has, it's built on something I controlled, and now you control it." My mother's knees buckled. She sank onto the curb, my brothers still pressed against her chest. "No," she whispered. "No, that's impossible." "There's a lawyer," my father said, his voice cutting through her disbelief. "Her name is Margaret Hale. She has everything. Documents, deeds, recordings. She's been watching him for 3 years. Watching them. Waiting for this moment. Call her in the morning. Do not call tonight. Do not react. Let him think he's won. Let him celebrate. Let him get comfortable. And then, Clara, you take everything back." The video ended. The screen went black. My mother sat there, rain pouring over her, my brothers crying against her chest, and something inside her shifted. The humiliation didn't vanish. The pain didn't fade. But underneath it, something harder began to form. Something cold and sharp and patient. She stood, adjusted my brothers, and started walking. A bus stop glowed in the distance, a small shelter with a bench. She made it there, collapsed onto the seat, and pulled my brothers close. They quieted, sensing her heartbeat, her warmth. She stared out at the empty street and thought about Marcus, about Vanessa, about the mansion and the life she just lost. Across the city, on a rooftop terrace, Marcus raised a glass of champagne. Vanessa draped herself across his lap, laughing. "Freedom tastes good, doesn't it?" she purred. Marcus grinned. "Best decision I ever made." They didn't know that every light in that mansion, every dollar in those accounts, every piece of security they felt was about to disappear. They didn't know that the woman they'd thrown away was already planning her return. They didn't know that the humiliation they'd inflicted was the spark that would burn their world down. My mother pulled my brothers closer and whispered into the rain, "I'll protect you. I'll win, and they'll never see me coming." The storm had raged, but a new dawn, cold and gray, was already on the horizon, promising not peace, but a calculated, methodical war. What secrets, I wondered, did my father truly hold, and how deeply would their roots entwine with our destiny? The morning arrived, a muted canvas of gray and cold, as if the world itself had forgotten how to paint with color. We found refuge in Mrs. Chen's apartment, a sanctuary smelling of lavender and old memories, a stark contrast to the opulent, yet now tainted grandeur of the mansion we had just left. My mother, wrapped in blankets, sat staring at her phone, as if it held not just answers, but the very fabric of a life she didn't know how to piece back together. My twin brothers, blissfully unaware of the seismic shift in their young lives, slept peacefully in a makeshift crib beside her, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect, innocent rhythm. Mrs. Chen, our elderly neighbor, a woman who had always treated my mother with the tender affection reserved for a lost daughter, poured weak tea into chipped mugs, her silence a profound kindness that spoke volumes. My mother's hands, still trembling from the ordeal, replayed my father's video for the third time. His face, older and worn, filled the small screen, but his eyes, burning with an almost prophetic clarity, made my mother's chest ache with a mixture of grief and a burgeoning hope. "Your father prepared for this," the message had said. But how? How could a man, supposedly dead for 8 years, have orchestrated such a meticulous plan for betrayal? How could a man, who had lived his entire life as a humble warehouse manager, secretly own a mansion worth millions, along with a vast, hidden fortune? Nothing about the last 12 hours made any logical sense. And yet, here we were, holding irrefutable proof that everything my mother thought she knew about her life, about our family, had been a carefully constructed illusion. "You need to eat something," Mrs. Chen said softly, placing a bowl of congee on the table, her voice a gentle anchor in the swirling chaos of my mother's thoughts. My mother shook her head, her gaze still fixed on the phone. "I can't. Not yet." Mrs. Chen sat down across from her, her wrinkled hands folded in her lap, her eyes filled with a wisdom born of years. "That man threw you out like garbage. Your babies aren't even a week old. And now you tell me your father, God rest his soul, left you something. Clara, you need to be careful. Rich people don't give up power easy." My mother nodded, but her mind was already elsewhere, racing through the implications of her father's words. The video had mentioned a portal, a hidden access point embedded within the message itself. She had found it in the early hours of the morning, tucked inside a symbol she had almost missed, a testament to her father's meticulous nature. He had always been careful, deliberate, the kind of man who measured twice and cut once. She tapped the symbol again, and the portal opened, revealing a dizzying array of files, documents, spreadsheets, and legal papers, all bearing names and numbers that made her head spin. "What is all this?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The first document was a trust deed, the Ward Family Trust, established 20 years ago, listing her as the sole beneficiary upon certain conditions. The mansion on Riverside Drive, the very one Marcus had so cruelly kicked us out of, was listed as property of the trust, not his, not even jointly owned. It was hers. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, washing away the last vestiges of her despair, replacing it with a cold, hard resolve. She scrolled further, discovering bank accounts, investment portfolios, insurance policies, all under her father's control, all designed to activate the moment she was betrayed or abandoned. How did he know? How did he see this coming when she had been so utterly blind? "Clara," Mrs. Chen's voice pulled her back from the abyss of her thoughts. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think I have," my mother said, her voice barely a whisper, still reeling from the sheer magnitude of the revelation. She clicked on another file, and a second video began to play. Her father appeared again, but this time, he looked directly into the camera, his gaze so piercing it felt as if he could see her, as if he were sitting right across from her in Mrs. Chen's small apartment. "If you're watching this second video, it means you found the portal. Good. That means you're ready to listen." His voice was steady, calm. The same voice that used to read her bedtime stories when she was a little girl. A voice that now carried the weight of a profound, hidden truth. I need you to understand something, Clara. I wasn't just a warehouse manager. That was the cover. The story I told to keep you safe. I worked in asset management for very wealthy people. People who needed their money hidden, protected, moved quietly. I was good at it. Too good. And over the years, I built something of my own. Something for you. My mother's breath caught in her throat. Mrs. Chen leaned closer, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. What's he saying? He's saying he lied to me, my mother whispered, a fresh wave of tears blurring her vision. My whole life he lied. Her father continued, his voice unwavering. I saw Marcus the first time you brought him home. I saw the way he looked at our house, at your mother's jewelry, at you, like you were something he could use. I hired investigators. I watched him, and everything I feared came true. He married you for access, for the appearance of stability, for the connections he thought your family didn't have. But he didn't know about me, about what I'd built, about what I'd hidden. The video then showed a series of documents flashing across the screen, each one stamped and notarized, irrefutable proof of his meticulous planning. The mansion was purchased through a shell company I controlled. Marcus thinks his name is on the deed because I made sure he saw a fake one. The real deed has always listed you as the owner, held in trust until you turned 30, or until you were abandoned, whichever came first. The accounts he's been spending from, they're yours. Every dollar I funneled into his business, every loan I co-signed, every investment he thought was his, it all reverts to you the moment he violates the terms of the trust. My mother's hands covered her mouth, stifling a sob. Tears streamed down her face. Papa, she whispered, why didn't you tell me? Her father's face softened, a rare glimpse of the loving man she remembered. Because I wanted you to be happy. I wanted to believe I was wrong about him. But I also wanted to make sure that if I wasn't wrong, you'd have a way out. You'd have power. You'd have proof. The screen shifted to a contact card. Margaret Hale, attorney at law, with a phone number and an address. Margaret has been watching Marcus for 3 years. She has recordings, financial statements, evidence of affairs, fraud, everything you'll need. But Clara, listen to me. Do not move too fast. Let him think he's won. Let him get comfortable. Let him make mistakes. And then, when the time is right, you take it all back. Not with anger, not with violence, but with evidence, with the law, with patience. The video ended. My mother sat in stunned silence, the phone still glowing in her hands. Mrs. Chen reached across the table and gripped her wrist. You believe him? My mother nodded slowly. I don't know how, but yes, I believe him. Then what are you going to do? My mother looked at my brothers, still sleeping peacefully, their tiny faces perfect and unaware. She thought about Marcus, about Vanessa, about the way they'd laughed as she walked away. She thought about the mansion, the life she'd lost, the humiliation that still burned in her chest. And then she thought about her father, about the years he'd spent preparing for this moment, about the trust he'd placed in her to finish what he'd started. I'm going to call Margaret, my mother said, her voice steady for the first time since the expulsion. And then I'm going to do exactly what Papa said. I'm going to let them think they've won. I'm going to watch. I'm going to wait. And then I'm going to take everything back. Mrs. Chen smiled, a slow, satisfied smile that mirrored the quiet resolve now hardening in my mother's eyes. Your father raised you right. My mother picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then a crisp, professional voice answered. Margaret Hale speaking. My name is Clara Ward, my mother said, her voice strong, clear, no longer broken. My father told me to call you. There was a pause, a beat of anticipation. Then Margaret's voice softened just slightly. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years. Are you ready? My mother looked at my brothers, at the files on her phone, at the life she was about to reclaim. Yes, she said. I'm ready. The path ahead was long, fraught with unseen challenges, but the seeds of a powerful, meticulously planned justice had been sown. What would this formidable lawyer, Margaret Hale, reveal next about the intricate web my father had woven? Margaret Hale's office, perched on the 14th floor of a building that exuded the scent of old money and new ambition, felt like a world away from the damp, cold bus stop where we had spent the night. My mother arrived precisely at 9 in the morning, my twin brothers strapped to her chest in a double carrier Mrs. Chen had thoughtfully lent her. Her clothes were borrowed, her hair still damp from a quick, hurried shower, but her spine was ramrod straight, and her eyes, though tired, were clear and resolute. She had spent the night devouring every document her father had left, memorizing names and numbers until they burned into her brain. If she was going to reclaim her life, she needed to understand every single weapon in her arsenal, every intricate detail of the battle ahead. The receptionist, a young woman with impeccably applied makeup and a practiced, dismissive smile, looked my mother up and down with barely concealed judgment. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. My mother met her gaze, her voice calm and unwavering. "Margaret is expecting me. Tell her Clara Ward is here." The receptionist's expression shifted from haughty dismissal to genuine surprise. She picked up the phone, whispered something into the receiver, then nodded. "She'll see you now. Last door on the right." It was a small victory, a tiny crack in the wall of disdain, but it was a start. Margaret's office was a study in power and understated elegance. Dark wood, rich leather, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the sprawling city below. The woman behind the desk was in her 50s, her gray hair pulled back in a tight, no-nonsense bun, dressed in a navy suit that looked like it cost more than my mother's entire borrowed wardrobe. But her eyes were what truly commanded attention. Kind, yet incredibly sharp and assessing, the eyes of someone who had witnessed too many battles to waste time on pleasantries. "Clara Ward," Margaret said, standing and extending her hand, her grip firm and steady. "Your father spoke about you constantly. He was convinced this day would come. I'm only sorry he was right." My mother shook her hand, a silent acknowledgement of the shared burden and the unspoken understanding between them. "Thank you for seeing me." "Sit," Margaret said, gesturing to the plush leather chair across from her. My mother sat, carefully adjusting my brothers, who stirred but thankfully remained asleep, nestled against her. Margaret studied her for a moment, her gaze piercing, then opened a thick folder on her desk. "Before we begin, I need to know something. Are you here for revenge, or are you here for justice?" My mother didn't hesitate, her answer immediate and unwavering. "Justice." "Good," Margaret said, a faint approving smile touching her lips. "Because revenge is messy and expensive. Justice is clean and permanent. Your father understood that. He spent 15 years building a case that couldn't be broken, couldn't be argued, couldn't be bought off. What Marcus did to you 3 nights ago wasn't just cruel. It was the final piece of evidence we needed to activate the trust and reclaim every asset he's been exploiting." She slid a document across the desk, its legal language dense and intimidating, yet holding the promise of liberation. My mother picked it up, her eyes scanning the intricate legal jargon. "The Ward Family Trust, established in 2010, listing her as the sole beneficiary. The mansion on Riverside Drive, purchased through a shell company her father controlled, held in trust until Clara turned 30, or was abandoned by her spouse. She was 29. The abandonment clause had been triggered the very moment Marcus threw us out. He owns nothing," my mother whispered, the realization settling in her chest, cold and powerful. "Not the house, not the cars, not even the business he thinks he built." "Correct," Margaret confirmed, her voice crisp and authoritative. "The venture capital firm Marcus runs? Your father was the silent investor. Every dollar Marcus used to start that company came from your father's accounts, funneled through offshore holdings to make it look like Marcus had outside investors. He didn't. It was always your father's money, which means it's now your money." My mother felt a profound sense of vindication, a quiet strength solidifying within her. "Why didn't my father just tell me?" she asked, the question tinged with a lingering sadness. "Because he loved you," Margaret said simply, her voice softening, "and he wanted to believe Marcus would prove him wrong. He hoped that marriage, children, time would change Marcus into the man you thought he was. But your father was also a realist. He knew men like Marcus don't change. They just get better at hiding." She pulled out another file, this one even thicker, overflowing with documents. "For the last 3 years, I've had investigators documenting everything: affairs, financial fraud, tax evasion, misuse of trust funds. Marcus has been stealing from you since the day you got married. He's been funneling money into offshore accounts, buying properties under shell companies, building a financial empire he thinks is untouchable. But every transaction can be traced back to your father's original investment, which means every asset Marcus thinks he owns is legally yours. My mother's hands tightened on the document, a silent testament to the fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. What about Vanessa? Margaret's smile was thin and dangerous, a predator's grin. Vanessa Chun is an interesting case. She's been on Marcus's payroll for 4 years, officially as his executive assistant. Unofficially, she's been his mistress for 3. She also happens to be embezzling funds from the company. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. Marcus doesn't know because he's too arrogant to check his own books. But we know, and when the time comes, she'll go down with him. My mother looked at my brothers, their tiny faces peaceful against her chest, a stark reminder of the innocent lives she was fighting for. I don't want them to know their father is a criminal. Then we'll be strategic, Margaret said, her voice firm. We won't destroy him. We'll simply take back what's yours and let him live with the consequences of his choices. But Clara, you need to understand something. This won't be fast. We need to let him get comfortable. Let him think he's won. Let him make mistakes. The more confident he gets, the sloppier he'll be. And when he's at his most vulnerable, we strike. My mother nodded slowly, absorbing every word. How long? Weeks? Maybe a month. We need documentation. We need witnesses. And we need him to incriminate himself. Can you be patient? My mother thought about the rain, the cold marble steps, the sickening sound of the door slamming. She thought about Vanessa's smug smile, Marcus's contempt, the way they dismissed her like she was nothing. Yes, she said, her voice unwavering. I can be patient. Margaret leaned back in her chair, her expression approving. Good. Now, let's talk logistics. You need a place to live, something safe and close enough to monitor the situation, but far enough that Marcus doesn't know where you are. I have a property in the West End, fully furnished, paid for by the trust. You and the twins can stay there as long as you need. I can't afford— You can, Margaret interrupted, a gentle but firm correction. The trust has been generating income for 15 years. You have more money than you realize. Your father made sure of that. My mother felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of relief and overwhelming gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by winning, Margaret said, her gaze intense. Thank me by taking back what's yours, and showing your children that dignity and patience are more powerful than cruelty and arrogance. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the bustling city. Your father was one of the smartest men I ever met. He played the long game, and he played it perfectly. Now it's your turn. My mother stood, adjusted my brothers, and joined Margaret at the window. Below, the city moved in its chaotic rhythm, people rushing to meetings and appointments, utterly unaware of the quiet war being waged in offices and courtrooms. What do I do first? My mother asked, her voice filled with a newfound determination. Margaret handed her a phone, sleek and new. This is a secure line. Only you and I have the number. Use it for everything related to the case. Second, you document everything. Every interaction with Marcus. Every message. Every attempt at contact. Third, you live your life. Find a routine. Take care of the twins. Let him think you've disappeared, that you've given up. And when he's convinced you're no longer a threat, we'll hit him with everything we have. My mother took the phone, felt its weight in her palm. He's going to be angry. Let him be angry, Margaret said, a glint in her eye. Angry men make mistakes, and we'll be there to document every single one. My mother looked at my brothers, then back at Margaret. When this is over, what happens to Marcus? Margaret's expression didn't change, remaining perfectly neutral. That depends on him. If he fights, we bury him. If he accepts the terms, he walks away with his freedom and nothing else. Either way, you win. My mother felt something shift inside her, something that had been broken 3 nights ago, but was slowly rebuilding itself into something harder, sharper, unbreakable. Then let's begin, she said, her voice a quiet declaration of war. Margaret smiled. Welcome to the fight, Clara Ward. Your father would be proud. The stage was set, the players in position, and the intricate dance of justice was about to begin. But what unforeseen challenges would Marcus throw their way as he clung desperately to his crumbling empire? 3 weeks had passed since my mother walked out of Margaret's office, armed with a meticulously crafted plan and a renewed sense of purpose. 3 weeks of quiet mornings in the West End apartment, a peaceful haven far removed from the chaos of our expulsion. She spent her days feeding my twin brothers, their soft gurgles and tiny movements, a constant reminder of why she was fighting. But beneath the calm surface, a vigilant watch was maintained. Every message Marcus sent, demanding she sign over custody rights, every sneering voicemail from Vanessa, mocking her for being too weak to fight back, was meticulously documented, filed away as future evidence. My mother watched from a distance as Marcus, oblivious to the impending storm, threw lavish parties at the mansion, posting triumphant photos on social media of his new life, his newfound freedom, his perceived victory. He was celebrating on borrowed time, on stolen ground, and he had no idea. But today, the waiting ended. Today, my mother would return to the mansion, not as a victim begging for shelter, but as the rightful owner, armed with irrefutable documents that would shatter everything Marcus thought he'd built. The Rolls-Royce pulled up to the apartment precisely at 9 a.m, a sleek black behemoth that commanded attention, the kind of car that made people stop and stare. The driver, a distinguished man named James, who had worked for my father years ago, opened the door with a slight, respectful bow. "Miss Ward," he said, his voice a low, deferential rumble. "Are you ready?" My mother looked at herself in the mirror one last time. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back neatly, minimal makeup. She didn't need to look rich. She just needed to look certain, resolute, and utterly in control. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, betraying none of the fierce anticipation churning within her. Margaret sat in the back seat, her briefcase open, files spread across her lap, a general reviewing her battle plans. "The officers will meet us there. We have the eviction notice, the deed transfer documents, and the cease and desist orders for all accounts and credit cards. The moment we arrive, everything Marcus has been using stops working. His cards will decline. His access to the business accounts will be frozen, and he'll have exactly 48 hours to vacate the property." My mother nodded, her hands steady, even though her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "What if he fights?" "He will fight," Margaret said, her voice devoid of doubt. "Men like Marcus always fight, but that's what we want. Every word he says, every threat he makes, it all becomes evidence. The officers will document everything. The neighbors will see. And by tonight, this story will be all over the city." The Rolls-Royce glided smoothly through traffic, turning onto Riverside Drive, the street where the mansion stood like a monument to Marcus's lies. My mother saw the golden lights glowing in the windows, the perfectly manicured lawn, the ostentatious fountain in the driveway that Marcus loved to show off in his social media posts. Her home, her father's gift, stolen and flaunted by a man who had never earned a single brick of it. 2 police cars were already parked at the curb, their presence drawing curious stares from neighbors who had begun gathering on their porches and lawns. My mother saw Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down, the woman who had once told her at a charity event that she was lucky to have married so well. She saw Mr. Jennings, the retired banker who had complimented Marcus on his business acumen. They were all watching now, their phones out, recording. "Showtime," Margaret said, gathering her files with a decisive snap. James opened the door, and my mother stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, a sound that resonated with quiet authority. The morning sun caught the Rolls-Royce, making it gleam like a powerful declaration. She walked toward the mansion, Margaret beside her, the officers falling into step behind them. Every eye on the street followed her movement, a silent, captivated audience. The front door opened before they reached it. Marcus stood there, barefoot, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep, his face still flushed with the remnants of a night of celebration. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to pure, unadulterated anger in the space of a single heartbeat. "Clara!" He looked at the officers, at Margaret, at the gleaming Rolls-Royce. "What the hell is this?" "Mr. Marcus Ward," one of the officers said, stepping forward, his voice calm and official. "I'm Officer Daniels. We're here to serve you with an eviction notice and several legal documents pertaining to property ownership and asset freezing. You need to accept these papers." Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and disbelieving, laced with a desperate arrogance. "Eviction? This is my house. I own this house. Actually, you don't, Margaret said, her voice calm, professional, and utterly devastating. She handed him a folder. Inside, you'll find the original deed to this property, purchased in 2015 by the Ward Family Trust, with Clara Ward listed as the sole beneficiary. You'll also find documentation showing that every dollar you've spent in the last 6 years came from accounts controlled by Clara's late father, and now controlled by Clara herself. This house, the cars in the garage, the business you think you built, all of it belongs to her. Marcus stared at the folder, as if it were a venomous snake, his face draining of all color. That's impossible. I signed papers. I have documents. You have fake documents, Margaret said, her voice unwavering. Documents her father created to make you feel secure while he monitored your every move. The real documents are here, notarized, legal, and binding. You have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings and vacate the premises. Any attempt to damage property or remove items not explicitly yours will result in criminal charges. Vanessa appeared behind Marcus, wearing one of my mother's old robes, her expression smug until she saw the officers, her face blanching. What's going on? They're lying, Marcus hissed, his voice rising in a desperate crescendo. This is harassment. I'm calling my lawyer. Please do, Margaret said, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. You have no legal claim to this property or any of the associated assets. My mother stepped forward, her voice quiet, but clear enough for everyone on the street to hear, each word a precise surgical strike. You threw me out 3 weeks ago, Marcus. You told me I was dead weight. You put me and our newborn babies on the street in the middle of the night because you thought I had nothing, that I was nothing. But you were wrong. Marcus's eyes locked on hers, and for the first time since I had known him, I saw it. Raw, unadulterated fear. Clara, listen. No, she said, cutting him off, her voice gaining strength. You listen. Every lie you told is documented. Every dollar you stole is accounted for. Every benefit you enjoyed while pretending to be someone you're not. It's all over. This house is mine. The business is mine. And you have 2 days to get out. Vanessa grabbed Marcus's arm, her voice shrill with panic. She can't do this. Tell her she can't do this. She already did, Margaret said, handing another folder to Vanessa. And Miss Chun, you'll find documents in there detailing your embezzlement from Ward Ventures. We have records of every fraudulent transaction, every falsified expense report, every account you thought you'd hidden. You have 2 options. Return the money and resign quietly, or face criminal charges. Your choice. Vanessa's face went white. The folder slipped from her hands, scattering papers across the pristine marble floor. Marcus turned to the officers, his voice desperate. This is insane. You can't just believe whatever she says. Officer Daniel's expression didn't change. Sir, we're not here to debate ownership. We're here to serve legal documents. If you have a dispute, you'll need to take it up in court. But until then, you need to comply with the eviction notice. The neighbors were closer now, their phones raised, recording every second. My mother could hear their whispers, the shock and fascination in their voices. She turned to face them, her voice carrying across the lawn, a powerful declaration. For 6 years I lived in this house as Marcus's wife. I gave him everything I had. And 3 weeks ago, he threw me and our 3-day-old twins into the rain because he thought I was powerless. But my father knew better. He prepared for this. He made sure that when the truth came out, there would be no doubt about who was really powerless. She turned back to Marcus, her eyes steady, unwavering. You wanted me gone because you thought I was in your way. But I was never in your way, Marcus. I was the foundation you built your lies on, and now that foundation is gone. Marcus's jaw clenched, his face a mask of impotent rage. You're going to regret this. No, my mother said, her voice calm and chillingly certain. You're going to regret underestimating me. Margaret handed final documents to the officer. All accounts associated with Marcus Ward have been frozen as of 8 this morning. Credit cards, business accounts, personal holdings, all inaccessible. He has 2 days to arrange alternative living situations and transportation. After that, any attempt to return to this property will be treated as trespassing. Marcus stood there, the folder in his hands, the mansion behind him, the Rolls-Royce gleaming in his driveway, and for the first time in his life, he had nothing to say. My mother turned and walked back to the car, her head held high, her steps measured and deliberate. James opened the door, and she slid inside. Margaret followed. The officers remained on the porch, ensuring Marcus understood the documents were binding. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, my mother looked back at the mansion one last time. Marcus stood in the doorway, Vanessa beside him, both of them frozen in disbelief, their world crumbling around them. The neighbors were already talking, their phones buzzing with messages and posts. By tonight, the whole city would know. The woman they'd pitied, the wife they dismissed, had just reclaimed everything. And she'd done it with patience, evidence, and the unshakable certainty that justice, when done right, didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be thorough. The mansion, once a symbol of her humiliation, now stood as a testament to her quiet, powerful triumph. But even with this victory, the fight was far from over. What new schemes would Marcus devise in his desperation, and how would my mother prepare for the next phase of this intricate battle? The mansion felt different now, imbued with a new energy, a sense of rightful ownership that permeated every room. My mother walked through spaces she had once meticulously cleaned and decorated, rooms where she had hosted elaborate dinners for Marcus's business partners, only for him to shamelessly take credit for her efforts. She passed through rooms where she had cried alone, her tears silent witnesses to his late-night absences and his clandestine rendezvous with Vanessa. But the tears were gone now, replaced by a cold, precise determination. Margaret had been unequivocally clear. Ownership was merely the first step. To truly protect my twin brothers, to secure their future against any further machinations, my mother needed to ensure Marcus could never again use the legal system, or any other means, against her. This meant gathering evidence so thorough, so damning, that any judge would see him for the manipulative, self-serving man he truly was. "He'll come after custody," Margaret had warned during their meeting that morning, her eyes sharp and knowing. "Men like Marcus don't accept defeat. They reframe it. He'll claim you're unstable, that you manipulated your father, that the twins deserve a father with resources and stability. He'll make himself the victim." My mother had nodded, her mind already racing, anticipating his every move. "Then we need to show he's neither stable nor fit to be their father." "Exactly," Margaret had affirmed, "which is why we're going to let him bury himself." The plan was elegant in its simplicity, a psychological trap designed to exploit Marcus's most glaring weakness, his arrogance. Arrogant men, Margaret knew, talked when they thought they were safe, when they believed they held the upper hand. My mother would arrange a private dinner, a supposed attempt at reconciliation, and she would let him believe he had won her back, that she was desperate and vulnerable. Margaret's team had already installed state-of-the-art recording equipment throughout the mansion, hidden cameras and microphones in every room Marcus was likely to use. Every admission, every threat, every revealing word he uttered would be meticulously documented, an irrefutable testament to his true character. "Are you sure you can do this?" Margaret had asked, her eyes searching my mother's face, a flicker of concern in her usually stoic demeanor. Sitting across from him, pretending to be weak, letting him think he has power over you? My mother had met her gaze without flinching, her resolve unwavering. "I've been doing it for 6 years. What's one more night now?" As she set the dining room table with the fine china Marcus adored, the crystal glasses he always insisted upon, she felt nothing but a calm, almost surgical determination. My brothers were safely with Mrs. Chen, far away from whatever emotional battle was about to unfold that night. My mother had rehearsed her role meticulously, practicing the trembling voice, the apologetic tone, the portrayal of a desperate woman willing to do anything to keep her family together. It was a performance, and she intended to make it flawless. Marcus arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, exactly on time, wearing the expensive suit my mother had always said made him look powerful. He stood in the doorway, his expression guarded, calculating, trying to decipher the reason for this unexpected invitation. "You said you wanted to talk," he stated, his voice wary. "I do," my mother said, her voice soft, uncertain, perfectly playing her part. "Please come in." He walked past her, his eyes sweeping across the mansion, cataloging what he had lost, a flicker of resentment in their depths. "You've redecorated. Something needed to change." my mother said, her voice still gentle. She gestured to the dining room table, laden with a carefully prepared meal. I made your favorite. Steak, medium rare, the way you like it. Marcus sat down slowly, suspicion still etched on his face. What's this about, Clara? You humiliate me in front of the entire neighborhood. You take everything I work for, and now you want to have dinner? My mother sat across from him, her hands folded demurely in her lap. I want to talk about the twins. About us. There is no us, Marcus said sharply, his guard still up. You made that clear when you showed up with lawyers and cops. I was angry, my mother said, letting her voice crack, a perfectly timed display of vulnerability. You hurt me, Marcus. You threw me out when I was at my weakest, but I've had time to think, and I realize fighting isn't good for anyone, especially not the babies. Marcus leaned back, his expression softening just slightly, a hint of his old charm resurfacing as he began to believe he was regaining control. So, what are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can work something out, my mother said, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with a feigned desperation. Maybe we don't have to be enemies. Maybe we can co-parent, find a way to make this work without dragging each other through court. She watched his eyes, saw the calculation happening behind them. He was trying to figure out her angle, trying to decide if she was genuine or if this was another trap. Why the sudden change? He asked, his suspicion still lingering. My mother looked down at her hands, a picture of remorse. Because I'm tired, Marcus. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of fighting, and I don't want my children growing up thinking their parents hated each other. She let a single tear slide down her cheek, perfectly timed, perfectly placed. I just want peace. Marcus picked up his wine glass, swirled it, took a slow sip, his confidence visibly growing. You know, Clara, I always thought you were smarter than you let on. All those years playing the beautiful wife, and now this. The mansion, the money, the power play. Your father taught you well. My father wanted to protect me, my mother said quietly, her voice tinged with a genuine sadness. That's all he ever wanted. Protect you? Marcus repeated, his tone mocking, a sneer returning to his lips. Is that what you call it? Setting up elaborate trusts, hiding assets, treating me like a criminal? My mother's pulse quickened, but her face remained a mask of calm vulnerability. You were the one who threw me out, Marcus. You were the one who chose Vanessa. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter and dismissive. Vanessa was a mistake, a distraction. But you, Clara, you were always the long game. I just didn't realize your father was playing a longer one. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp, predatory. But here's what I don't understand. Why give me a chance now? You won. You took everything. Why not just finish me off? This was the moment. My mother let silence hang between them, heavy and deliberate, a pregnant pause before the final strike. Then she spoke, her voice barely a whisper, imbued with a profound, almost spiritual conviction. Because the twins deserve better than parents who destroy each other. And because despite everything, I don't want you to have nothing. Marcus studied her, and she could see him weighing her words, measuring her sincerity, his arrogance blinding him to the truth. Finally, he smiled, the same charming, dangerous smile he had used when they first met, a smile that now felt like a viper's embrace. You know what I think, Clara. I think you're scared. I think you know that if I fight for custody, I could win. I have connections, resources, lawyers who eat people like Margaret Hale for breakfast. And I think you're here trying to negotiate before I destroy you in court. My mother's heart hammered, but her face showed only sadness, a perfect portrayal of a woman on the verge of breaking. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am scared. But wouldn't it be easier for both of us if we just agreed? You get time with the twins. I keep the house. We split assets fairly. Split assets fairly? Marcus repeated, his smile widening into a triumphant, cruel grin. After your father stole everything from me? He didn't steal anything, my mother said, her voice firming slightly, a hint of her true self breaking through. It was always mine. Was it? Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to something intimate and threatening. Or did he manipulate a dying old man's trust documents to make it look that way? Because I've got lawyers looking into that, Clara. And if we find any irregularities, any hint of fraud or elder abuse, This whole thing comes crashing down on you. My mother forced herself to look frightened, her eyes wide with feigned panic. There was no fraud. We'll see, Marcus said, picking up his fork, cutting into the steak and taking a bite. This is good. You always were a decent cook. They ate in an intense silence, my mother playing her part flawlessly, Marcus growing more comfortable, more arrogant with each passing minute, his guard lowered by the wine and his belief that he had regained the upper hand. By the time dessert arrived, he was talking freely, his true nature fully exposed. You want to know the truth, Clara? I married you because I thought you were controllable, sweet, naive, desperate for love. I thought I could build my empire using your father's connections and then discard you when I didn't need you anymore. And it almost worked. My mother kept her eyes down, her expression carefully neutral. Almost. The problem was your father, Marcus continued, his voice thick with wine and arrogance, oblivious to the recording devices capturing his every word. He was smarter than he looked, all those years pretending to be some simple warehouse manager while he was hiding millions. I underestimated him. I won't make that mistake with you. My mother looked up, her eyes meeting his, a cold fire burning within them. What does that mean? Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest, most chilling thing she had ever seen. It means I'm going after full custody. Not because I want to raise those kids, but because they're leverage. You want them? You'll sign over half the trust, half the assets, half of everything. Otherwise, I'll drag you through court for years. I'll make you look unstable, unfit, dangerous, and by the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. My mother felt ice settle in her chest. There it was, the admission Margaret had said would come, the undeniable proof of his intentions, his manipulation, his complete disregard for his own children. You'd use your own babies as leverage? My mother whispered, letting shock color her voice. A final, subtle performance. They're not babies, Clara. They're assets, just like this house, just like the trust, just like everything else. Marcus stood, tossed his napkin on the table, his victory complete in his mind. Thank you for dinner and for showing me exactly how desperate you are. My lawyers will be in touch. He walked toward the door, his stride confident, triumphant. My mother stood, her voice steady now, the performance over. The mask finally dropped. Marcus. He turned, a smug smirk on his face. Yeah? You should know something, my mother said, her voice clear and resonant, echoing through the dining room. Every word you just said was recorded. Every admission, every threat, every piece of evidence I needed to prove you're unfit to parent those twins. It's all documented. Marcus's face went slack, his smugness replaced by a dawning horror. What? My mother walked to the sideboard, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small recording device, its red light blinking innocently. Audio and video everywhere in this house. Margaret warned me you'd do this. She said, men like you always tell the truth when they think they've won. Marcus lunged toward her, a primal roar of rage escaping his lips. But my mother stepped back, her phone already in her hand. I've already sent copies to Margaret, to the family court judge, and to my secure backup. You take one step closer, and I call the police. You threaten me again, and it becomes evidence of domestic intimidation. You try to fight for custody, and every judge in this city will see you admitting you don't want your children. You just want to use them as weapons. Marcus stood frozen, his face red with impotent rage, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him once more. You set me up. No, my mother said, her voice calm and utterly devastating. I gave you a chance to be decent. You chose to be exactly who you've always been, and now everyone will know it. The trap had sprung, the evidence secured, and Marcus, in his arrogance, had sealed his own fate. But how would he react to this ultimate humiliation? And what desperate measures would he take next to salvage his shattered reputation? Marcus, in his deluded arrogance, still believed he held cards to play. 3 days after the dinner disaster, after his lawyers, with grim faces, informed him that the recordings were legally obtained and admissible in court, after Vanessa, realizing he was utterly broke, stopped answering his calls, he decided to throw a party. Not just any party, but a lavish rooftop celebration at the Pinnacle Hotel, one of the city's most exclusive venues. The the kind of event where the city's elite gathered to see and be seen. He sent invitations to every business associate, every society figure, every person who had ever mattered in his carefully constructed world. The message he desperately tried to convey was clear. I'm still standing. I'm still powerful. And Clara Ward's little victory was just a temporary setback, a minor inconvenience in his grand, unassailable life. My mother heard about the party from Margaret, who, in turn, had heard about it from 3 different sources within hours of the invitations going out. He's desperate, Margaret said over the phone, her voice laced with a knowing weariness. Desperate men do stupid things. My mother in the nursery, watching my twin brothers sleep, their tiny hands curled into innocent fists, felt a flicker of concern. Should we be worried? Worried? No, Margaret replied, her tone firm. Prepared? Yes. I've already sent our team undercover, of course. Photographers, journalists, even a few strategically placed guests who owe me favors. Whatever happens tonight, we'll document it. And if Marcus does what I think he'll do, he'll hand us the final nail for his coffin. My mother felt a flicker of something dark and satisfied, a quiet vindication. What do you think he'll do? He'll brag, Margaret said simply, her voice almost a whisper. He'll drink too much, surround himself with people who'll tell him what he wants to hear, and he'll talk about you, about the twins, about his plans, and we'll record every single word. The Pinnacle's rooftop was transformed into a scene straight out of a glossy magazine. White lights strung between towering glass pillars, champagne towers glowing under the glittering city skyline, a facade of success and extravagance. Marcus stood at the very center of it all, wearing a tuxedo he had undoubtedly rented on credit, a forced, brittle smile plastered across his face, as if he owned the world instead of owing it. Vanessa was conspicuously absent, a glaring void in his carefully curated image. The guests who had bothered to show up, and there were noticeably fewer than he had hoped, mingled with polite distance, their conversations careful, their eyes filled with a thinly veiled curiosity. Everyone had heard the rumors. Everyone knew something had happened with his wife, his house, his business, but no one knew the full, unvarnished story. And Marcus, in his hubris, intended to control the narrative, to spin a tale of his own making. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus called out, raising his glass, his voice booming with a false bravado. The sparse crowd quieted, turning toward him with expressions ranging from mild interest to outright skepticism. "Thank you for coming tonight. I know there's been talk, speculation about my personal life, my business, my marriage, and I want to set the record straight." He took a long, dramatic sip of champagne, his smile widening, a mask of self-importance. "My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife Clara Ward, has been spreading lies about me. She's used her father's money and influence to try to destroy everything I've built. But here's what she doesn't understand. I built my company with my own hands, my own intelligence, my own vision, and no amount of legal manipulation will change that." The crowd murmured, some nodding cautiously, others exchanging knowing glances. In a back corner, partially hidden behind a decorative column, stood a woman named Rachel Chun, one of Margaret's most trusted investigators. She held her phone at waist level, camera recording, capturing every word, every gesture, every subtle shift in Marcus's demeanor. Beside her, a young journalist named David Kim adjusted his position, ensuring he had the perfect angle. Marcus continued, his voice growing louder, more confident, fueled by the champagne and the illusion of control. "Clara thinks she can use our children as leverage. Twin babies born just weeks ago, and she's already weaponizing them. She's keeping them from me, denying me access, trying to paint me as an unfit father. But let me tell you something." He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes sweeping across the room, seeking validation. "I don't need those kids to prove who I am. I am Marcus Ward. I built Ward Ventures from nothing. I made myself into someone this city respects. And if Clara thinks she can take that from me, she's more deluded than I thought." A few guests shifted uncomfortably, the blatant disregard for his children making even the most jaded among them uneasy. James Harrington, a prominent venture capitalist who had known my mother's father, frowned and slowly set down his glass. "Marcus," he called out, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the self-congratulatory monologue. "Isn't it true that Ward Ventures was primarily funded by external investors? Marcus waved the question away with a dismissive flick of his hand. Initial seed funding, sure. But the vision, the execution, the success, that was all me. And isn't it also true, James continued, his voice steady, relentless, that those external investors were actually controlled by Clara's father through offshore accounts? Marcus's smile faltered, a crack appearing in his carefully constructed facade. That's a mischaracterization. Is it? James pressed, his gaze unwavering. Because I've seen the documents. Samuel Ward was a client of mine for 15 years. I know exactly how he structured his holdings. And I know he never trusted you. The rooftop went silent, the murmurs dying down, replaced by a palpable tension. Marcus's face flushed a deep, angry red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that Samuel called me 2 weeks before he died, James said quietly, his voice carrying clearly across the stunned silence. He told me he was worried about his daughter's marriage. He asked me to be a witness for some documents he was signing. Documents that protected Clara in case you ever showed your true colors. And from where I'm standing, Marcus, it looks like he was right to worry. Marcus slammed his glass down on the nearest table, the sound echoing sharply. Get out! This is my party. Get out! James smiled, a thin, knowing smile that spoke of quiet triumph. Actually, it's the hotel's party. You're just renting the space. And given that your credit card was declined when you tried to pay the deposit, I'd say the hotel might have some questions about tonight's bill. The murmurs grew louder, morphing into a buzz of excited whispers. Guests pulled out their phones, some texting furiously, others already posting updates to social media. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, his composure rapidly unraveling. That's a lie. My accounts are temporarily frozen because of legal complications. But I have resources. I have power. You have nothing, came a voice from the crowd. Vanessa stepped forward, and for a fleeting moment, Marcus's face lit with relief, but her expression was cold, her eyes hard, devoid of any warmth. Vanessa, tell them the truth. The truth? Vanessa laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. The truth is you're broke, Marcus. The truth is every account you bragged about, every investment you claimed was yours. It all belonged to Clara. You were living off her father's money for 6 years. And you were too arrogant to realize it. Marcus lunged toward her, a guttural growl escaping his throat, but security guards, anticipating the outburst, stepped between them. You knew, Marcus hissed, his eyes wild with betrayal. You knew the whole time. Of course I knew, Vanessa said, her voice dripping with contempt. Why do you think I stuck around? I was skimming from the accounts you thought you controlled. Small amounts at first, then bigger. You never noticed, because you were too busy playing the big man. But now that the money's gone, so am I. She turned to the rapidly dwindling crowd, her voice rising to ensure everyone heard. And for anyone wondering, Clara Ward has evidence of everything. Every fraud, every lie, every crime Marcus committed, thinking he was untouchable. She's been building a case for weeks, and when it goes public, all of you standing here will be questioned about what you knew and when you knew it. The rooftop emptied faster than it had filled. Guests grabbed their coats, called their drivers, and disappeared into elevators without a backward glance, eager to distance themselves from the unfolding disaster. Within minutes, only Marcus remained, standing alone under the white lights, his rented tuxedo suddenly looking cheap, his forced smile gone, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Rachel Chun stepped out from behind the column, her phone still recording, her expression calm and professional. Mr. Ward, would you like to make a statement for the record? Marcus looked at her, his eyes wild and unfocused. Who are you? I work for Margaret Hale, Rachel said calmly, and I've recorded everything that happened here tonight. Your threats toward your wife, your admission that you don't value your children, Vanessa's confirmation of fraud. It's all documented. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Marcus's voice came out strangled, a pathetic croak. This is entrapment. No, Rachel said, her voice firm, unwavering. This is justice. You threw a public party and made public statements. Nothing about tonight was private or protected. And now every major news outlet in the city has footage of you melting down in front of the people you tried to impress. She lowered her phone. A final, devastating blow. Clara Ward sends her regards. Marcus sank into a chair, his head in his hands, utterly defeated. The city spread out before him, lights twinkling in the darkness, indifferent to his spectacular collapse. He had thought he could rebuild his reputation, reclaim his power, and prove that my mother's victory was temporary. Instead, he had done exactly what she predicted. He destroyed himself in front of witnesses, creating evidence so damning that no lawyer could spin it, no judge could ignore it. On the other side of the city, in the mansion that was rightfully hers, my mother sat in the nursery, watching my twin brothers sleep. Her phone buzzed with a message from Margaret. "It's done. He confessed everything in front of 40 witnesses. We have him." My mother set the phone down and picked up one of my brothers, holding her daughter close. "Your father just lost," she whispered. "Not because I destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself, and you'll grow up knowing that dignity and patience always win in the end." Outside, the night was quiet, the city settling into sleep. But in courtrooms and law offices across town, documents were being prepared, evidence was being compiled, and the final act of Marcus Ward's downfall was being carefully, methodically arranged. My mother had waited, watched, and struck only when the moment was perfect. And now, with Marcus's own words sealing his fate, she could finally rest, knowing her children were safe, her legacy was secure, and justice had been served exactly as her father had planned. The public humiliation was complete, but the legal battle still loomed. How would Marcus fare in court, now that his every lie and manipulation had been laid bare for the world to see? My dear friends, if you've made it this far, if you've felt the ache in your heart for my mother's struggle, and the surge of hope as her father's plan unfolded, then you truly understand the spirit of this journey. This isn't just a story. It's a testament to the quiet strength that resides within us all, waiting for its moment to shine. I feel such a deep connection with each of you who chooses to walk this path with me. If this story has resonated with you, if it stirred something within your soul, please, take a moment, hit that subscribe button, join our growing family, and let's continue to explore these incredible tales of resilience and hidden power together. Your presence here means the world to me, and I truly believe we're building something special, a community where every voice matters. And I'm so curious, what part of my mother's journey has touched you the most so far? Have you ever felt that quiet strength rise within you when you thought all hope was lost? Share your thoughts, your feelings, your own stories in the comments below. Your experiences are invaluable, and they inspire me more than you know. Perhaps your story, or a theme you suggest, could even be the next adventure we embark on together. Let's keep this conversation going, heart to heart, soul to soul. The courtroom smelled like old wood and palpable tension, a heavy atmosphere that seemed to press down on everyone present. Every seat was filled with observers who had devoured the headlines, watched the viral videos, and now wanted to witness firsthand how this extraordinary story would finally conclude. My mother sat at the plaintiff's table, a picture of quiet dignity. My twin brothers nestled peacefully in a double stroller beside her, oblivious to the weight of the moment. She wore a navy dress, simple and elegant, her hair pulled back, no jewelry save for my grandmother's pearl earrings, a subtle nod to the legacy that had brought her here. Margaret sat to her left, a formidable presence, with 3 assistants behind them, their boxes of meticulously compiled evidence stacked like an impenetrable fortress. Across the aisle, Marcus sat alone, a stark contrast to his usual entourage. His lawyer, a tired-looking man named Gerald Porter, who had clearly taken the case out of obligation rather than any genuine belief in his client's innocence, shuffled papers with the resigned energy of someone already defeated. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. She had taken a plea deal 2 days earlier, agreeing to testify against Marcus in exchange for reduced charges on her embezzlement. The gallery whispered, a low hum of anticipation. Phones were silenced, and then Judge Patricia Monroe entered, her presence commanding an immediate, profound stillness in the room. "All rise," the bailiff called, and everyone stood, a collective acknowledgement of the authority she embodied. Judge Monroe, a woman in her 60s with striking silver hair and sharp, discerning eyes that had witnessed every conceivable lie a courtroom could produce, took her seat and surveyed the room with an unblinking gaze. "Be seated," She opened the file in front of her, scanning the documents with an expression that revealed absolutely nothing of her thoughts. We're here for the matter of Ward versus Ward, custody determination, and asset distribution. I've reviewed the preliminary filings, and I'll say this up front. I don't like my time wasted. Both parties will present their cases clearly and concisely. Ms. Hale, you may begin. Margaret stood, her movements precise and controlled, every gesture conveying confidence and meticulous preparation. Your Honor, this case is about protection. Protection of two innocent children from a father who has repeatedly demonstrated that he views them not as human beings, but as leverage. Protection of assets that were always legally Clara Ward's, but were systematically exploited by Marcus Ward through fraud, manipulation, and betrayal. She gestured to her assistants, who began distributing folders filled with evidence to the judge and the court clerk. In these folders, Your Honor, you'll find comprehensive documentation. Trust deeds dating back 15 years showing Clara Ward as the sole beneficiary. Financial records proving every dollar Marcus Ward spent came from accounts controlled by Clara Ward's late father. Recordings of Marcus Ward explicitly stating he plans to use the children as bargaining chips. And witness testimony from over 20 individuals confirming a pattern of deception and emotional abuse. Judge Monroe flipped through the documents, her expression unchanging, her eyes absorbing every detail. Marcus leaned over to whisper something to his lawyer, but Porter just shook his head, a gesture of futility. Margaret continued, her voice unwavering, building her case brick by painstaking brick. Clara Ward was thrown out of her own home at midnight, 3 days after giving birth via C-section, with newborn twins in her arms, and nowhere to go. Marcus Ward orchestrated this expulsion, believing she had no resources, no power, and no recourse. He was wrong on all counts. What he didn't know was that Clara Ward's father, Samuel Ward, had spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. She walked toward the evidence table, picking up a sealed envelope, its contents about to unleash a powerful emotional blow. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a video recording made by Samuel Ward 6 months before his death. In it, he explicitly outlines his concerns about Marcus Ward's character, his reasons for establishing the trust, and his instructions for Clara Ward should she ever need protection. Judge Monroe nodded, her gaze now fixed on the screen that was about to descend. Play it. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly, casting long shadows as a screen descended from the ceiling. Samuel Ward's face appeared, older and thinner than my mother remembered, but his voice, though crackling slightly through the speakers, was strong and clear, filled with a profound love and foresight. My name is Samuel Ward. I'm recording this on March 15, 2017, in the presence of my attorney, Margaret Hale, and witness James Harrington. If this video is being played, it means my daughter Clara has been betrayed by her husband, Marcus Ward, and it means the protections I put in place are now active. The courtroom was utterly silent, every person captivated by Samuel's voice, a voice from beyond the grave, speaking truth to power. My mother felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of grief for her father and immense gratitude for his unwavering love, but she kept her gaze steady, absorbing every word. I established the Ward Family Trust in 2010 when Clara first introduced me to Marcus. I didn't trust him then, and everything I've observed since has confirmed my suspicions. He married my daughter for access, for the appearance of legitimacy, and for the financial benefits he assumed came with our family. What he doesn't know is that I spent 30 years in asset protection, hiding and securing wealth for clients who needed discretion. I used those same skills to protect Clara. Samuel's image leaned forward, his expression intense, his eyes burning with a fierce, protective love. The mansion on Riverside Drive is held in trust for Clara, purchased through shell companies Marcus will never trace. Every investment he thinks he made with his own money was actually funded by accounts I controlled. I've documented every transaction, every lie, every moment of manipulation. And I've instructed Margaret to release this information only when Clara is safe and ready to reclaim what's hers. The video ended. The lights came up, illuminating the stunned faces in the courtroom. Judge Monroe's expression had shifted from neutral to something harder, more focused, a clear indication that the evidence had struck its mark. Mr. Porter, does your client wish to dispute any of the documentation provided? Gerald Porter stood slowly, looking even more deflated than before. Your Honor, my client maintains that he acted in good faith throughout his marriage, that he was unaware of the extent of Samuel Ward's financial involvement, and that his primary concern is the welfare of his children. Is that so? Judge Monroe's tone was dry, laced with a barely concealed skepticism. She looked directly at Marcus, her gaze piercing. Mr. Ward, stand up. Marcus stood, his face pale, his usual bravado completely gone. Mr. Ward, I've reviewed the recordings submitted by Ms. Hale's team, recordings where you explicitly state, and I quote, I don't need those kids to prove who I am, and they're not babies, they're assets. Do you deny making those statements? Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out, his carefully constructed lies crumbling around him. Answer the question, Judge Monroe said sharply, her patience clearly wearing thin. I was angry, Marcus finally managed, his voice a pathetic croak. I said things I didn't mean. You said them multiple times, in multiple contexts, to multiple people. Judge Monroe countered, her voice rising with a controlled indignation. You said them at a private dinner with your wife, at a public party in front of 40 witnesses, and in text messages to associates that have been submitted as evidence. These aren't heat-of-the-moment slips. These are consistent expressions of your true feelings toward your children. She flipped through more documents. Her eyes narrowed. I also have testimony from household staff, neighbors, and business associates describing a pattern of emotional abuse toward Clara Ward, belittling her in public, controlling her finances, isolating her from friends and family. Mr. Ward, you present yourself as a victim of legal maneuvering, but the evidence shows you as a manipulator who got caught. Marcus tried to speak, to interject, but Judge Monroe raised her hand, silencing him with a stern glare. I'm not finished. What disturbs me most about this case is your complete lack of remorse. Even now, standing in my courtroom with overwhelming evidence of your misconduct, you maintain that you're the wronged party. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and your fitness as a parent. She turned to my mother, her voice softening, a hint of compassion entering her tone. Ms. Ward, please stand. My mother stood, her legs steady despite the rush of emotion coursing through her. You've been through an ordeal that would break most people, Judge Monroe said, her voice now gentle but firm. You were betrayed by someone you trusted, expelled from your home while recovering from childbirth, and forced to rebuild your life with 2 newborns depending on you. Yet, you did so with dignity, patience, and respect for the legal process. That speaks to your character. Judge Monroe looked down at her notes, the courtroom holding its collective breath. I'm ruling as follows. Primary physical and legal custody of the minor children is awarded to Clara Ward. Marcus Ward is granted supervised visitation every other weekend, contingent on completion of a parenting course and anger management therapy. All assets currently held in the Ward Family Trust remain under Clara Ward's control, as they were always legally hers. Marcus Ward is ordered to vacate the Riverside property within 7 days, and is prohibited from contacting Clara Ward except through legal counsel regarding matters of the children. The gavel came down, the sound sharp and final, echoing through the silent courtroom. Marcus sank into his chair, his face in his hands, utterly defeated. Gerald Porter gathered his papers with the resigned efficiency of a man who had known this outcome was inevitable. Margaret leaned over to my mother, a quiet triumph in her eyes. It's done. You won. But my mother didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired and relieved, and a profound sadness for what could have been if Marcus had been different, if he had been the man she believed him to be. My brothers stirred in their stroller, one of them making a soft, sleepy sound. My mother bent down, adjusted their blankets, and whispered, You're safe now. Mama made sure you're safe. The courtroom began to empty, observers filing out to call their friends, update their social media, and spread the news that Clara Ward had won everything. James Harrington approached, his expression kind. Samuel would be proud of you. Thank you, my mother said, her voice soft, for being there when he needed a witness, for believing him. He was one of the smartest men I ever knew, James said, and you're just like him, patient, strategic, unshakable when it matters. Marcus stood, his lawyer guiding him toward the exit. He paused at my mother's table, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, She thought he might apologize, might show some glimmer of the man she'd once loved, but his expression hardened. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," my mother said quietly, her voice unwavering. "The judge ruled. The evidence is public. You have no leverage, no power, and no claim to anything I have. It's over, Marcus. And the only question now is whether you accept that with dignity, or destroy what little reputation you have left." He stared at her, and she saw the moment he realized she was right. The fight went out of his shoulders. He turned and walked away without another word. Margaret began packing the evidence boxes, her team moving with practiced efficiency. "What happens now?" my mother asked, a new chapter beginning to unfold. "Now you go home," Margaret said, a gentle smile on her face. "You raise your children. You restore your father's foundation. You live the life you were always meant to live, free from manipulation and fear." My mother picked up her purse, checked on my brothers one more time, and walked toward the courtroom doors. The hallway beyond was filled with cameras and reporters, all wanting statements, reactions, details. But Margaret's security team formed a corridor, guiding my mother through without stopping. "Ms. Ward, how do you feel about the ruling?" one reporter called out. My mother paused just for a moment and looked back at the crowd, her voice carrying clearly. "I feel like justice was done, not just for me, but for my children. And I hope anyone watching this who's been told they're powerless, who's been made to feel small, understands that patience and truth always win in the end." She walked out into the sunlight, my brothers secured beside her, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to smile. The courtroom reckoning was over. Her father's plan had worked. And now, finally, she could begin the life he'd protected for her, the life she'd earned through strength, strategy, and unshakable dignity. But even with this profound victory, the echoes of Marcus's words, "This isn't over," lingered. Could he truly be defeated? Or would he find yet another way to disrupt the peace my mother? 3 weeks after the courtroom victory, a quiet calm settled over the mansion, a peace my mother had barely dared to dream of. She thought the war was over, that the relentless battles were finally behind her. She had settled into a gentle rhythm with my twin brothers, morning feedings, soft lullabies, and afternoon walks through the neighborhood, where people no longer whispered with pity, but smiled with genuine respect. The mansion itself had been meticulously restored, room by room, each space reclaimed and reimagined as something that belonged to her and her children, not to the lingering ghosts of Marcus's manipulation. Margaret had assured her the custody arrangement was ironclad, that Marcus's supervised visitation was the absolute most he would ever get, that she could finally, truly breathe. But my mother, having learned the bitter lessons of betrayal, knew that men like Marcus didn't accept defeat quietly. They waited, regrouped, and struck when you thought you were safest, when your guard was finally down. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier, Marcus's lawyer's firm embossed on the elegant envelope. My mother's hands trembled as she opened it, a cold dread already coiling in her stomach, instinctively knowing it wouldn't be good news. Inside was a motion for emergency custody modification, 40 pages of dense legal arguments claiming that my mother was an unfit mother, that she had manipulated the court system using her father's wealth, that my brothers deserved a stable, 2-parent home, and, most audaciously, that Marcus had undergone significant personal growth in the mere weeks since the ruling. "He's claiming family unity," my mother said into the phone, her voice tight with a mixture of disbelief and rising anger. Margaret was silent for 3 seconds too long, a pause that spoke volumes. "What does that mean?" my mother pressed, her heart beginning to pound. "What aren't you telling me?" "It means he's found a new angle," Margaret said carefully, her voice betraying a hint of concern. "He's not arguing that you're a bad mother. He's arguing that splitting custody is harmful to the children, that they need both parents equally involved, and that the only way to achieve that is full joint custody with him having primary physical placement." My mother felt ice settle in her stomach, a familiar chill of fear. But the judge already ruled. He lost. Judges can be petitioned for modifications if circumstances change, or if new evidence emerges, Margaret explained, her voice now more urgent. "Marcus is claiming he's completed therapy, that he's addressed his anger issues, and that he now understands the importance of fatherhood. He's presenting himself as reformed. That's a lie, my mother exclaimed, her voice sharp with indignation. 3 weeks ago, he called the twins assets. Now he's father of the year? I know, Margaret said, her tone grim, and we'll prove it's a lie. But Clara, there's something else in this motion, something that concerns me. My mother's grip tightened on the phone, her knuckles white. What? He's requesting a full audit of the Ward family trust. He's claiming your father's assets were obtained through illegal means, that the trust itself might be fraudulent, and that any custody arrangement should account for the possibility that your financial situation is built on criminal activity. My mother sat down hard, the letter falling from her hands, scattering across the polished floor. That's insane. My father was an asset manager. Everything he did was legal. I know that. You know that. But Marcus is betting on creating enough doubt to force a settlement, Margaret said, her voice firm, cutting through my mother's rising panic. He's not trying to win. He's trying to make you so afraid of public scrutiny, of having your father's reputation dragged through the mud, that you'll give him what he wants just to make it stop. What does he want? My mother asked, though she already knew the answer, a bitter taste in her mouth. Money, Margaret said flatly without hesitation. He wants a percentage of the trust, ongoing support payments, and shared custody so he can claim parental rights to anything you build for the children. This isn't about the twins, Clara. This is about him trying to reclaim power over you by targeting your inheritance. My mother felt rage bloom hot and sharp in her chest, a righteous anger that fueled her resolve. When is the hearing? 2 weeks. And Clara, you need to prepare yourself. He's going to be convincing. He's going to play the victim, the reformed father, the man who lost everything because of legal technicalities. The judge might be sympathetic. Judge Monroe saw through him once, my mother said, a flicker of hope in her voice. She'll see through him again. We're not getting Judge Monroe, Margaret said, delivering another blow. Marcus's lawyer filed for a change of venue, claiming bias. We got Judge Robert Carlson. He's older, traditional, and he has a reputation for believing in family reconciliation at all costs. My mother closed her eyes, her mind racing, a new strategy already forming. Then we give him evidence he can't ignore. We show him exactly who Marcus is and what he's really after. 2 weeks passed like a relentless countdown. My mother spent every single day preparing, reviewing documents with Margaret, rehearsing answers to questions she knew Marcus's lawyer would undoubtedly ask. She meticulously documented every supervised visitation, noting that Marcus showed up late 3 times, left early twice, and spent most of his time engrossed in his phone rather than engaging with my brothers. She gathered character references from neighbors, from Mrs. Chen, from the staff who had worked in the mansion during her marriage and witnessed Marcus's cruel treatment of her. She even reached out to Vanessa's lawyer, securing a sworn statement detailing Marcus's conversations about using the children as leverage. On the morning of the hearing, my mother dressed in a professional, understated gray suit and arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, a picture of calm determination. My brothers were safely with Mrs. Chen, shielded from the emotional turmoil that was about to unfold. Margaret met her at the entrance, her expression grim but resolute. He's already inside. And Clara, I need to warn you. He brought reinforcements. Inside the courtroom, Marcus sat with 3 people my mother didn't recognize. An older couple in expensive, conservative clothes who radiated disapproval, and a younger woman in a conservative suit holding a briefcase. Who are they? My mother whispered, a fresh wave of apprehension washing over her. The couple are his parents, Margaret said, her voice low. They've been estranged from Marcus for 5 years, but apparently they've reconciled. The woman is Dr. Ellen Hayes, a child psychologist. He's hired her to testify that the twins need a father figure. They're 4 months old, my mother hissed, her indignation barely contained. They need food, sleep, and love. They don't need a father who sees them as bargaining chips. I know, Margaret said, placing a reassuring hand on my mother's arm. But we need to stay calm. Let him make his case. Let him expose himself. And then we dismantle it piece by piece. Judge Carlson entered, a man in his late 60s with white hair and a stern, almost weary expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. This is a motion for custody modification in the matter of Ward versus Ward. Mr. Porter, you may present your case. Gerald Porter stood, looking surprisingly more energized than he had during the original trial, a renewed spark in his eyes. "Your Honor, my client Marcus Ward comes before you today, not as the man he was, but as the man he's become. In the weeks since the original custody ruling, Mr. Ward has completed an intensive therapy program, reconciled with his family, and gained a deep understanding of his failures as a husband and father. He's not here to take the children away from their mother. He's here to ensure they have the benefit of both parents equally and consistently." He gestured to Marcus, who stood and approached the witness stand. Marcus looked different, my mother noticed with a chill. His hair was cut shorter, his suit was modest instead of flashy, and his expression was one of humble contrition. This was a performance, carefully crafted and perfectly executed, designed to sway the traditional Judge Carlson. "Mr. Ward," Porter began, his voice gentle, "can you tell the court what you've learned in the past month?" Marcus nodded, his voice soft and measured, a picture of reformed sincerity. "I've learned that I was selfish, that I prioritized my career and my ego over my family, that I hurt the woman I married and failed the children I brought into this world. I'm not asking the court to forgive me. I'm asking for the chance to be the father my children deserve." Judge Carlson leaned forward, his expression softening slightly, a dangerous sign. "You've completed therapy?" "Yes, Your Honor. 12 intensive sessions with Dr. Patricia Monroe, no relation to the previous judge, focusing on anger management, communication, and parenting skills." Porter handed documents to the clerk. "We have Dr. Monroe's full report confirming Mr. Ward's progress and recommending increased parental involvement." Margaret stood, her voice cutting through the carefully constructed narrative. "Your Honor, if I may, Dr. Monroe's report is based on 12 sessions over 3 weeks. That's barely enough time to address surface behaviors, let alone deep-seated character issues." Judge Carlson frowned, a hint of annoyance in his eyes. "Ms. Hale, you'll have your chance to cross-examine. Mr. Porter, continue." The stage was set for Marcus's carefully orchestrated deception, but my mother and Margaret were ready to expose the cracks in his performance. What devastating truths would Margaret unveil to shatter his facade and protect my brother's future? Porter then called Dr. Ellen Hayes to the stand, the child psychologist Marcus had brought as his reinforcement. Dr. Hayes, a woman with a calm, professional demeanor, spoke eloquently about the importance of father figures in a child's development, citing studies that showed better outcomes for children with active paternal involvement. She lectured on the psychological harm of parental alienation, painting a picture of a mother who might intentionally keep a father away. It was all general, all theoretical, nothing specific to my twin brothers or to Marcus's actual behavior, but it sounded incredibly convincing, especially delivered in Dr. Hayes's soothing, authoritative tone. The judge, a traditional man, listened intently, nodding occasionally, a clear sign that Marcus's carefully constructed narrative was beginning to take hold. My mother felt a cold dread creep in, but she held her composure, trusting Margaret's strategy. Then it was Margaret's turn. She stood, a formidable presence, and walked to the witness stand, fixing Dr. Hayes with a level, unwavering stare that seemed to strip away all pretense. "Dr. Hayes," Margaret began, her voice calm but piercing, "have you met the Ward twins?" Dr. Hayes hesitated, a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. "No, I have not." "Have you interviewed Clara Ward?" Margaret pressed, her voice unwavering. "No." "Have you reviewed any of the evidence from the original custody hearing, including recordings of Marcus Ward explicitly stating he views his children as assets rather than human beings?" Dr. Hayes's hesitation was more pronounced this time, her composure beginning to crack. "I was provided with limited background information." "Limited," Margaret repeated, her tone dripping with incredulity. "So, your testimony is based entirely on general principles rather than the specific circumstances of this case." "I was hired to provide expert context," Dr. Hayes said, her tone now defensive, her professional facade crumbling. "Context," Margaret said, a faint, dismissive smile touching her lips. "Not evidence, not observation, just theory. Thank you, Doctor. No further questions." The air in the courtroom shifted. The weight of Dr. Hayes's testimony suddenly diminished, her credibility severely undermined. Margaret then called her own witnesses, each one a carefully chosen piece of the puzzle designed to expose Marcus's true character. First, Mrs. Chen, our kind elderly neighbor, took the stand. She spoke simply, but powerfully, describing my mother's unwavering devotion to my brothers, her tireless care, and Marcus's sporadic, disengaged visits, how he would show up late, leave early, and spend most of his time on his phone, barely acknowledging the babies. Her testimony painted a vivid picture of a loving mother and a detached, self-absorbed father. Next, James Harrington, the prominent venture capitalist who had known my father, testified about Samuel Ward's legitimate career in asset management and the meticulously legal structure of the trust, dismantling Marcus's claims of fraud and illegal activity. His words carried immense weight, coming from a respected figure in the financial world. And finally, the most devastating blow. A recording expert took the stand and authenticated the dinner conversation, the very one where Marcus, in his arrogance, had admitted his true intentions. The courtroom listened in stunned silence as Marcus's voice filled the space, cold and calculating, devoid of any paternal affection. They're not babies, Clara. They're assets. Just like this house. Just like the trust. Just like everything else. Judge Carlson's expression, which had softened earlier, now darkened considerably. He looked directly at Marcus, his eyes narrowed, a clear sign of his growing disapproval. Mr. Ward, this recording is dated 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks after you claim to have begun your transformation. How do you explain threatening to use your children as leverage while simultaneously completing therapy? Marcus's carefully constructed mask cracked, his composure shattering. I was angry. Clara had taken everything from me. I wasn't thinking clearly. You seem to have a pattern of not thinking clearly when you're angry, Judge Carlson said, his voice stern, his patience clearly exhausted. A pattern that concerns me greatly when considering the welfare of 2 infant children. He reviewed his notes, the courtroom holding its breath, sensing the impending judgment. Mr. Ward, I've listened to your testimony and reviewed your documentation. I've also listened to evidence that directly contradicts your claims of personal growth. 12 therapy sessions don't erase 6 years of documented manipulation and emotional abuse, and they certainly don't excuse threatening to exploit your own children for financial gain mere weeks ago. He turned to my mother, his gaze softening once more. Ms. Ward, the original custody arrangement stands. Primary physical and legal custody remains with you. Mr. Ward's visitation will continue to be supervised, and any future motions for modification will require substantial evidence of sustained behavioral change over a minimum of 1 year. The gavel came down, the sound sharp and final, echoing through the now silent courtroom. Marcus's parents, who had sat radiating disapproval, stood abruptly and left without looking at their son, their faces etched with shame. Doctor. Hayes gathered her briefcase and departed with professional detachment, her testimony utterly discredited. Marcus sat alone, his performance shattered, his final, desperate attempt at manipulation exposed and rejected. My mother felt something release in her chest, a profound tension she had been carrying since that ominous letter arrived. Margaret touched her arm, a gentle, reassuring squeeze. It's over for real this time. My mother nodded, but she didn't smile. She was tired of fighting, tired of having to prove her worth and her rights over and over again. She just wanted to go home, hold my brothers, and live the life her father had protected for her. He'll try again, my mother said quietly, a lingering doubt in her voice. No, Margaret said, her voice firm, resolute. He won't, because now he knows we'll always be ready, always have evidence, always be one step ahead. And eventually, even Marcus Ward will understand that some battles can't be won. The courthouse steps felt different this time. My mother descended slowly, deliberately, the afternoon sun catching the edges of her gray suit as reporters clustered at the bottom, cameras already rolling. She hadn't called them. They had come on their own, drawn by whispers of the custody battle, by rumors of Marcus Ward's spectacular courtroom collapse, by the growing legend of the woman who had been thrown out at midnight and returned in a Rolls-Royce. Margaret walked beside her, briefcase in hand, a silent guardian. But my mother was the one they wanted. A young reporter pushed forward first, microphone extended. Ms. Ward, how does it feel to win custody again after your ex-husband's allegations? My mother paused and met the camera directly, her gaze steady and unwavering. It feels like justice, not revenge. Her voice carried across the steps, clear and resonant. My father taught me that dignity isn't given, it's maintained. Even when someone tries to strip it away, even when you're standing in the rain with nowhere to go, you maintain it. And eventually, the truth catches up. Another reporter called out, "What would you say to other women facing similar situations, women being manipulated or controlled by their partners?" My mother's expression softened slightly, a profound empathy in her eyes. "I'd say document everything. Stay quiet when you need to build your case. Don't let anger make you reckless, because the system rewards preparation, not emotion. And most importantly, know your worth isn't determined by someone else's perception of you." She glanced back at the courthouse, a symbol of the battles fought and won. "I was thrown out like garbage. 4 months later, I owned everything he thought was his. That's not luck. That's a strategy meeting opportunity." The cameras loved it. By evening, clips of her statement had spread across local news stations, then social media, then beyond. Women in their 60s and 70s shared the videos with captions like, "This is what strength looks like." And she waited. She planned. She won. My mother's phone buzzed constantly with messages from people she hadn't heard from in years, some offering support, others admitting they doubted her story until now. Mrs. Chen called that night, her voice bright with pride. "You were on the 6 o'clock news. Everyone in my building is talking about you. They're saying you're a hero." My mother smiled tiredly. "My brother's finally asleep after a long day. I'm not a hero, Mrs. Chen. I'm just a mother who refused to let someone exploit her children." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "How many women stay silent because they're scared? How many let men like Marcus win because fighting seems too hard? You didn't. And now they're all watching, learning that it's possible to fight back and win." The courtroom battle was truly over, and my mother had emerged not just victorious, but as a beacon of hope. But what new path would she forge now that her personal fight for justice had become a public inspiration? The next morning, my mother received an unexpected call. A new chapter unfolding in her life, one she hadn't anticipated. "Ms. Ward, this is Patricia Gonzalez from the Women's Empowerment Coalition. We've been following your case, and we'd like to invite you to speak at our annual gala next month. We think your story could inspire hundreds of women who are currently trapped in situations similar to what you escaped." My mother hesitated. Public speaking had never been her strength, and the thought of standing on a stage, recounting her humiliation and the subsequent battles, made her stomach tighten with a familiar anxiety. But then she thought about the messages she'd received, about the women who had written to say her courthouse statement had given them the courage to leave their own abusive situations. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about a larger purpose, a spiritual calling to help others. "What would you want me to talk about?" my mother asked, her voice thoughtful. "Your journey," Patricia said, her voice warm and encouraging. "From the night you were expelled to the courtroom victory, the strategy, the patience, the rebuilding. We don't want a victim story. We want a survivor's blueprint." My mother looked at my brothers, sleeping peacefully in their crib, at the mansion her father had protected, at the life she had reclaimed through careful planning and unwavering resolve. This was it. This was the moment to turn her pain into purpose, her suffering into strength for others. "I'll do it." The weeks leading up to the gala passed in a blur of preparation. My mother worked closely with Margaret to identify which details were legally safe to share, which moments would resonate most powerfully with an audience hungry for hope. She practiced her speech tirelessly in front of Mrs. Chen, who cried twice and insisted my mother add more about my brothers. "People need to understand you weren't just fighting for yourself," Mrs. Chen said, wiping a tear from her eye. "You were fighting for them. That's what makes it so powerful." Meanwhile, Marcus's world continued its spectacular collapse. His parents, who had briefly reconciled with him for the custody hearing, had returned to their estrangement after Judge Carlson's ruling, disgusted by his exposed character. His business partnerships dissolved as news of his behavior spread like wildfire through professional circles. Vanessa had left him weeks ago, taking half the remaining assets in their settlement, a final act of betrayal. He had become exactly what my mother had predicted, a cautionary tale, a man whose arrogance and cruelty had isolated him completely. My mother felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a profound sense of freedom, a spiritual release from his toxic influence. The gala took place at the Riverside Hotel, a sprawling venue with glittering crystal chandeliers and a grand ballroom that seated 400 people. My mother arrived early, my brothers safely with Mrs. Chen back at the mansion, and stood backstage, listening to the excited hum of the crowd gathering. Patricia found her there, her smile reassuring. "You're going to be amazing. Just speak from the heart. They're already on your side." The introduction was brief, but powerful. Tonight, we have the privilege of hearing from a woman whose story has captivated our city and inspired countless others. She's a mother, a strategist, and a testament to the power of patience and preparation. Please welcome Clara Ward. The applause was immediate and thunderous, a wave of support that washed over my mother, filling her with a quiet strength. My mother walked onto the stage, the spotlight warm on her face, and looked out at the sea of women filling the ballroom. Most were her age or older, their faces marked by their own struggles and victories. She saw herself reflected in them, and in that moment, she understood that her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever been made to feel small, to every mother who had fought for her children, to every soul seeking justice. 4 months ago, she began, her voice steady, clear, and resonant. I stood in the rain at midnight, barefoot, holding my newborn twins with nowhere to go. My husband had thrown me out of the house I thought was ours, replaced me with his mistress, and told me I was dead weight. At that moment, I had 2 choices: collapse or survive. I chose survival. She told them about her father's message, about the trust he had secretly built to protect her, a legacy of love and foresight. She described the quiet months of rebuilding, of gathering evidence while Marcus celebrated his perceived victory, oblivious to the meticulous trap being laid. She explained the Rolls-Royce arrival, the courtroom confrontations, the custody battle where Marcus tried one final time to exploit her through our children. "But here's what I learned," my mother said, her voice rising with conviction, filling the vast ballroom. "Humiliation is temporary. Dignity is permanent. When someone tries to destroy you, they're betting you'll stay destroyed. They're counting on you being too tired, too scared, too broken to fight back. And the moment you prove them wrong, the moment you stand up with evidence and strategy and unshakable resolve, they have nothing left." The ballroom was silent, every woman leaning forward, captivated by her words, hanging on her every syllable. So, if you're in that rain right now, if you're holding your children and wondering how you'll survive tomorrow, I want you to know something. My mother's eyes swept across the crowd, connecting with each woman, offering a lifeline of hope. Document everything. Stay quiet when you need to. Build your case brick by brick. And when the moment comes, when you're finally ready to reclaim what's yours, do it with such precision that they never see it coming. The applause started slowly, then built into a thunderous standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes, a powerful affirmation of her message. Women approached her afterward, some crying, others simply wanting to shake her hand, their eyes filled with gratitude and newfound courage. One elderly woman, probably 75, gripped my mother's arm with surprising strength. "My granddaughter is in a situation like yours. I'm sending her your speech. You just saved her life." My mother drove home that night, feeling something she hadn't felt since before her marriage, purpose beyond mere survival. The mansion lights glowed warm as she pulled into the driveway, a beacon of sanctuary. Mrs. Chen met her at the door, beaming. The twins were perfect. "And Clara, you have 17 messages from women's organizations asking you to speak. You're becoming a movement." My mother picked up my sleeping brother, feeling his weight, the solid reality of what she had protected. "I'm not a movement, Mrs. Chen. I'm just a mother who refused to let her children be used as weapons." "That's exactly what the movement needs," Mrs. Chen said softly, her eyes filled with profound understanding. The city had watched my mother fall. Now they were watching her rise. And in living rooms across 3 countries, women her mother's age were taking notes, remembering their own battles and whispering to themselves, "If she could do it, maybe I can too." The personal fight for justice had blossomed into a powerful collective movement. But what final, unexpected twist awaited my mother as she embraced this new, expansive purpose? And how would her father's ultimate vision truly manifest? 6 months after the triumphant gala, a new sense of peace, tinged with a profound purpose, settled over my mother's life. She finally found the courage to enter my father's study, a room she had consciously avoided since reclaiming the mansion. Dust had settled on the rich mahogany desk, on the worn leather chair where Samuel Ward had spent countless nights managing fortunes and meticulously planning the protections his daughter hadn't known she would desperately need. It was a sacred space, a testament to his foresight and unwavering love. Now, she sat in his chair, the leather creaking softly beneath her, a tangible connection to his spirit. She opened the final drawer he had mentioned in his video message, her hands trembling with anticipation. Inside was a single, unassuming envelope, her name written in his careful, familiar handwriting. Her hands trembled as she opened it, a wave of emotion washing over her. Clara, if you're reading this, it means you've won. Not just the legal battles, not just the custody fight, but the war for your dignity and your children's future. I'm proud of you. I always knew you had the strength, even when you doubted it yourself. Now it's time to build something that outlasts both of us. The foundation documents are in the safe. The password is your mother's birthday. Use the trust, not just to protect yourself, but to protect others. That's how we turn pain into purpose. That's how we make suffering mean something. Love always, Dad. My mother wiped her eyes. A fresh wave of tears, both sorrowful and profoundly grateful, streaming down her face. She pulled herself together, her resolve hardening, and opened the safe. Inside were incorporation documents for the Ward Foundation for Women's Empowerment, already filed, already funded with a staggering $10 million from her father's estate. He had planned this years ago, anticipated not just her need for protection, but her eventual desire to help others, to transform her personal struggle into a beacon of hope for countless women. He had known her, truly known her, even in his absence. She called Margaret immediately, her voice thick with emotion. "Did you know about this?" "Your father mentioned it once," Margaret said carefully, a hint of a smile in her voice. "He told me that if you survived what he feared was coming, you'd want to do more than just survive. He said you'd want to fight for others, too. Was he right?" My mother looked at my brothers, now 8 months old, playing on the carpet, babbling to each other in their private, joyful language. "Yes," she said, her voice filled with a profound certainty. "He was right. How do we start?" Within 3 months, the Ward Foundation opened its doors in a beautifully renovated building downtown. The mission was simple, yet profoundly impactful: provide legal assistance, temporary housing, and financial support to women escaping abusive relationships or facing exploitation through their children. My mother hired a small, dedicated staff, including a bright young lawyer named Jessica Chun, Mrs. Chen's niece, who had survived her own harrowing custody battle and understood the system's cruelties intimately. The Foundation's first client was a woman named Diane, 32, who had been thrown out by her husband after discovering his affair. "I have 2 kids," Diane said during their initial meeting, her voice shaking with fear and desperation. "He's threatening to take them if I don't sign over my inheritance from my mother. He says he'll prove I'm unstable, that I'm a bad mother. I don't know what to do." My mother leaned forward, her expression calm but fierce, her eyes burning with empathy and resolve. "You document everything, Diane. Every threat, every message, every interaction. You don't engage emotionally. You engage strategically. And you never ever let him use your children as leverage. We're going to help you, Diane. And when we're done, he's going to understand that underestimating you was the biggest mistake of his life." Over the next year, the Foundation assisted 47 women, each story a testament to the pervasive nature of manipulation and abuse, and each victory a profound affirmation of my mother's purpose. Some cases were resolved quietly through negotiated settlements, allowing women to rebuild their lives with dignity and privacy. Others required fierce courtroom battles, where my mother occasionally testified as an expert witness on manipulation tactics and financial exploitation. Her calm, authoritative voice a powerful force for justice. Each victory felt deeply personal, a spiritual triumph over the darkness she herself had faced. Each woman who walked away with her children and her dignity intact felt like a validation of every moment my mother had suffered, every tear she had shed. The Foundation's tireless work quickly attracted media attention, then national recognition. My mother was invited to speak at conferences, to consult on policy proposals, to to meet with legislators about strengthening protections for mothers in custody disputes. She accepted selectively, always prioritizing my brothers, always remembering that her father's legacy was meant to protect, not to feed her ego. One afternoon, Marcus, a ghost from her past, appeared at the foundation's office. Security called my mother immediately. "Ms. Ward, your ex-husband is here. He's asking to see you. Should we remove him?" My mother's first instinct was refusal, a visceral desire to shield herself from his toxic presence, but curiosity, and perhaps a deeper, spiritual impulse, won out. "Send him to the conference room. I'll be there in 5 minutes." She brought Jessica with her, both for legal protection and moral support. Marcus sat at the table, looking diminished, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight and, more significantly, confidence. His face was drawn, his eyes tired, reflecting the toll of his self-inflicted downfall. "Thank you for seeing me," he said quietly, his voice devoid of its usual arrogance. My mother didn't respond, just watched him with the steady, unwavering gaze she had perfected in countless courtroom confrontations. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly unnerved by her silence. "I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here to apologize." "Apologize?" my mother repeated, her tone neutral, devoid of emotion. "After everything you've done, you think an apology matters now?" "No," Marcus admitted, his voice barely audible. "I don't think it matters. But I owe you one anyway. I was cruel, manipulative, and I treated you like an object instead of a person. I used our children as weapons. I tried to destroy you because I couldn't control you, and I'm sorry." He paused, seeming to gather a fragile courage. "I'm also here to sign away my parental rights. I've realized I'm not capable of being the father they need. You were right about everything, Clara. I don't deserve them." Jessica started to speak, a protest forming on her lips, but my mother raised a hand, silencing her. "You're right. You don't deserve them, but I'm not accepting your surrender of parental rights." Marcus looked confused, a flicker of his old arrogance returning. "Why not? I thought you'd want me gone completely." "Because the twins deserve better than a father who quit when things got hard," my mother said firmly, her voice imbued with a powerful spiritual wisdom. "Right now, you're a lesson in what not to be. But people can change, Marcus. Not quickly, not easily, but they can. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue supervised visitation. You're going to attend actual therapy, not 3-week performance therapy, but real, long-term work on why you treat people the way you do. And if in 5 years you've genuinely changed, if you become someone capable of loving those children without seeing them as assets, then we'll revisit custody arrangements." Marcus stared at her, stunned by her unexpected generosity. "You're giving me a chance after everything?" "I'm giving my children a chance to have a father who's worth knowing," my mother corrected, her gaze unwavering. "Whether you become that person is entirely up to you. But understand this, Marcus. If you ever, and I mean ever, try to manipulate them, use them, or hurt them the way you hurt me, there is no corner of this earth where my father's resources won't find you. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse. He stood, nodded to both women, and left without another word, a ghost of his former self. Jessica exhaled slowly. That was either incredibly generous or incredibly risky. "It was necessary," my mother said, her eyes fixed on the door where Marcus had exited, "because I refused to let his failures define my children's lives. They deserve the chance to know their father, even if he doesn't deserve to know them yet." The cycle of betrayal and revenge had been broken, replaced by a profound act of grace and a commitment to a future built on hope. But what would this new path mean for my mother? And how would her father's legacy continue to unfold in the lives of those she now protected? That evening, a small, intimate dinner was held at the mansion, a gathering that felt less like a celebration of victory and more like a quiet communion of souls. Margaret was there, her usual stoic demeanor softened by the warmth of the occasion. Mrs. Chen, her eyes twinkling with pride, brought a homemade dessert. Jessica, the young lawyer from the foundation, and Patricia Gonzalez from the Women's Empowerment Coalition, completed the circle. My twin brothers, now 8 months old, sat in their high chairs, gleefully smearing food everywhere and laughing at their own delightful mess, their innocent joy a powerful antidote to the darkness my mother had endured. "To Clara," Margaret said, raising her glass, her voice imbued with genuine admiration, "who turned midnight rain into morning sunshine." "To second chances," Mrs. Chen added, her voice soft and wise, "both the ones we give ourselves and the ones we give others." My mother looked around the table at these women who had become her chosen family, her spiritual sisters. She looked at the mansion that had transformed from a prison of lies to a sanctuary of truth. She looked at my brothers, who would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them with intelligence and grace, rather than bitterness and rage. "To my father," she said softly, raising her own glass, her eyes shining with love and gratitude, "who taught me that protection isn't just about defense. It's about building something strong enough that the people you love never need defending." They drank, they laughed, and later, after everyone had gone home, my mother carried my brothers upstairs to their nursery. She had decorated it herself, soft blues and gentle yellows, nothing like the cold elegance Marcus had preferred. She laid them gently in their cribs, watched them settle into sleep, and whispered the words she said every single night, a sacred ritual. "You are loved. You are protected. And you will always know that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, documenting everything, and making sure nobody can knock you down twice." Outside, the city lights glowed steady and warm, a comforting blanket over the sprawling metropolis. The mansion that had witnessed her deepest humiliation now stood as irrefutable proof of her triumph, a beacon of resilience. The foundation her father had envisioned was changing lives, brick by painstaking brick. The legacy she thought lost had been reclaimed and expanded into something that would outlast them all, a testament to enduring love and justice. My mother, Clara Ward, had been thrown out at midnight, barefoot and broken. She had returned in a Rolls-Royce, armed with evidence and unshakable dignity, and now, standing in the nursery, watching her children sleep, she understood the final, profound truth her father had tried to teach her. Victory isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so strong, so purposeful, so filled with love and justice, that their attempts to destroy you become mere footnotes in a much larger, more meaningful story. My brothers stirred, reached for each other across their cribs, their tiny hands finding comfort in each other's presence, a beautiful symbol of the connection my mother had fought so hard to protect. My mother smiled, turned off the light, and closed the door softly. Tomorrow, she would wake up and continue the work, helping women find their own paths from humiliation to triumph. But tonight, she simply existed in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had done more than survive. She had transformed suffering into purpose, pain into power, and midnight rain into a legacy that would shelter generations to come. The storm was truly over. The sun had risen, and Clara Ward, once discarded like garbage, now stood as living proof that patience, preparation, and unwavering dignity could overcome any betrayal, any humiliation, any attempt to break a woman who refused to stay broken. The profound impact of my mother's story, now echoing across the nation, brought with it a new kind of responsibility, a weight she carried with grace and unwavering resolve. The Ward Foundation for Women's Empowerment, born from her deepest pain, was thriving, a testament to her father's foresight and her own relentless spirit. Every day, women like Diane walked through their doors, their eyes filled with fear and desperation, mirroring the very emotions my mother had once felt. And every day my mother, with Jessica by her side, offered them not just legal aid and temporary shelter, but a blueprint for survival, a roadmap to reclaiming their dignity in their lives. She taught them to document everything, to engage strategically, not emotionally, and above all, never to let their children be used as leverage. It was a spiritual battle, fought with legal documents and unwavering patience, and each victory, no matter how small, resonated deeply within her soul. The Foundation's work, a beacon of hope in a world often shadowed by injustice, continued to attract significant media attention. My mother, once a private woman, found herself increasingly in the public eye, invited to speak at national conferences, to consult on policy proposals aimed at strengthening protections for mothers in custody disputes, and even to meet with legislators. She accepted these invitations selectively, always prioritizing my twin brothers, always remembering that her father's legacy was meant to protect, not to feed her ego. Her voice, once a whisper in the rain, now carried the weight of experience and the power of truth, inspiring countless others to find their own strength. She spoke not as a victim, but as a survivor, a strategist, a woman who had transformed her suffering into a powerful force for change. One quiet afternoon, the unexpected happened. Marcus, a ghost from a past she had meticulously dismantled, appeared at the Foundation's office. The security team, well-trained and vigilant, immediately called my mother. "Ms. Ward, your ex-husband is here. He's asking to see you. Should we remove him?" My mother's first instinct was a visceral refusal, a primal urge to shield herself from his toxic presence, to maintain the hard-won peace she had cultivated. But a deeper impulse, a spiritual curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of the compassion her father had instilled in her, won out. "Send him to the conference room. I'll be there in 5 minutes." She brought Jessica with her, not just for legal protection, but for moral support, a silent acknowledgement of the emotional weight this encounter carried. Marcus sat at the polished conference table, a stark contrast to the arrogant, self-assured man who had once dominated every room he entered. He looked diminished, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight and, more significantly, confidence. His face was drawn, etched with lines of fatigue and perhaps regret, his eyes tired, reflecting the toll of his self-inflicted downfall. "Thank you for seeing me," he said quietly, his voice devoid of its usual bravado, a hollow echo of his former self. My mother didn't respond, just watched him with the steady, unwavering gaze she had perfected in countless courtroom confrontations, a gaze that now held both strength and a profound, almost spiritual detachment. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly unnerved by her silence, by the quiet power she now exuded. "I'm not here to cause problems. I'm here to apologize." "Apologize?" my mother repeated, her tone neutral, devoid of any discernible emotion, a careful mask. "After everything you've done, you think an apology matters now?" "No," Marcus admitted, his voice barely audible, laced with a raw honesty she hadn't heard from him before. "I don't think it matters, but I owe you one anyway. I was cruel, manipulative, and I treated you like an object instead of a person. I used our children as weapons. I tried to destroy you because I couldn't control you. And I'm sorry." He paused, seeming to gather a fragile courage, his gaze meeting hers for a fleeting moment. "I'm also here to sign away my parental rights. I've realized I'm not capable of being the father they need. You were right about everything, Clara. I don't deserve them." Jessica started to speak, a protest forming on her lips, a natural reaction to such a profound admission. But my mother raised a hand, silencing her, a silent command. "You're right. You don't deserve them. But I'm not accepting your surrender of parental rights." Marcus looked genuinely confused, a flicker of his old arrogance, quickly extinguished, returning to his eyes. "Why not? I thought you'd want me gone completely, because the twins deserve better than a father who quit when things got hard," my mother said firmly, her voice imbued with a powerful spiritual wisdom that transcended mere legal strategy. "Right now, you're a lesson in what not to be. But people can change, Marcus. Not quickly, not easily, but they can. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to continue supervised visitation. You're going to attend actual therapy, not 3-week performance therapy, but real, long-term work on why you treat people the way you do. And if in 5 years you've genuinely changed, if you become someone capable of loving those children without seeing them as assets, then we'll revisit custody arrangements." Marcus stared at her, stunned by her unexpected generosity, by the profound grace she extended. "You're giving me a chance after everything?" "I'm giving my children a chance to have a father who's worth knowing," my mother corrected, her gaze unwavering, her purpose clear. "Whether you become that person is entirely up to you. But understand this, Marcus. If you ever, and I mean ever, try to manipulate them, use them, or hurt them the way you hurt me, there is no corner of this earth where my father's resources won't find you. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Marcus whispered, his voice hoarse, his spirit finally broken. He stood, nodded to both women, a gesture of submission, and left without another word, a ghost of his former self, walking away from the wreckage he had created. Jessica exhaled slowly, the tension in the room finally dissipating. That was either incredibly generous or incredibly risky. "It was necessary," my mother said, her eyes fixed on the door where Marcus had exited, a profound understanding in their depths. "Because I refused to let his failures define my children's lives. They deserve the chance to know their father, even if he doesn't deserve to know them yet." The cycle of betrayal and revenge had been broken, replaced by a profound act of grace and a commitment to a future built on hope, not bitterness. This was the true legacy her father had envisioned, a path of healing and transformation. But the path to true change for Marcus was long and uncertain. Would he embrace this unexpected second chance, or would his inherent nature ultimately prevail, proving that some wounds run too deep to ever truly heal? That evening, a small, intimate dinner was held at the mansion, a gathering that felt less like a celebration of victory and more like a quiet communion of souls, a sacred space where resilience and love intertwined. Margaret was there, her usual stoic demeanor softened by the warmth of the occasion, a rare glimpse into the compassionate woman beneath the formidable lawyer. Mrs. Chen, her eyes twinkling with pride and wisdom, brought a homemade dessert, a sweet offering that symbolized the comfort and support she had always provided. Jessica, the bright young lawyer from the Foundation, and Patricia Gonzalez from the Women's Empowerment Coalition, completed the circle, a testament to the new family my mother had built, a family forged not by blood, but by shared purpose and unwavering support. My twin brothers, now 8 months old, sat in their high chairs, gleefully smearing food everywhere and laughing at their own delightful mess, their innocent joy a powerful antidote to the darkness my mother had endured, a reminder of the pure, unadulterated love she had fought so fiercely to protect. The air was filled with soft chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the gentle sounds of my brother's playful babbling. It was a stark contrast to the tense, calculating dinners my mother had once hosted for Marcus's business partners, where every word was measured, every smile a performance. Here, there was authenticity, genuine connection, and a profound sense of gratitude. Margaret, raising her glass, her gaze fixed on my mother, her voice imbued with genuine admiration, broke the comfortable silence. "To Clara," she said, her words resonating with the weight of their shared journey, "who turned midnight rain into morning sunshine." It was a poetic tribute to the incredible transformation my mother had undergone, from a woman abandoned in the storm to a beacon of hope. "To second chances," Mrs. Chen added, her voice soft and wise, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of experiences, both the ones we give ourselves and the ones we give others. Her words hung in the air, a gentle reminder of the grace my mother had extended to Marcus, a testament to her evolving understanding of justice. My mother looked around the table at these extraordinary women who had become her chosen family, her spiritual sisters, her unwavering pillars of strength. She looked at the mansion that had transformed from a prison of lies and manipulation to a sanctuary of truth and healing, a physical manifestation of her reclaimed life. She looked at my brothers, who would grow up knowing their mother had fought for them with intelligence and grace, with strategic patience and unwavering dignity, rather than bitterness and rage. Their future, once uncertain and shadowed by Marcus's cruelty, was now bright, secure, and filled with boundless possibilities. "To my father," she said softly, raising her own glass, her eyes shining with a mixture of love, gratitude, and a profound understanding of his ultimate vision, who taught me that protection isn't just about defense. It's about building something strong enough that the people you love never need defending. It was a powerful acknowledgement of his enduring legacy, a legacy that had transcended death and continued to shape her path. They drank, they laughed, and later, after everyone had gone home, the mansion settled into a peaceful quiet. My mother carried my brothers upstairs to their nursery, a room she had decorated herself, infusing it with her own love and warmth. Soft blues and gentle yellows adorned the walls, a stark contrast to the cold elegance Marcus had preferred, a reflection of the new, nurturing environment she had created. She laid them gently in their cribs, watched them settle into sleep, their tiny chests rising and falling in unison, and whispered the words she said every single night, a sacred ritual that grounded her in her purpose. "You are loved. You are protected, and you will always know that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, documenting everything, and making sure nobody can knock you down twice. These words, born from her own crucible of suffering, were now a powerful mantra, a spiritual lesson she imparted to her children, ensuring they would grow up with an unshakable sense of their own worth and resilience. Outside, the city lights glowed steady and warm, a comforting blanket over the sprawling metropolis, a silent witness to the quiet triumphs unfolding within the mansion's walls. The mansion that had once witnessed her deepest humiliation now stood as irrefutable proof of her triumph, a beacon of resilience, a symbol of reclaimed power. The foundation her father had envisioned was changing lives, brick by painstaking brick, empowering women to break free from the chains of abuse and manipulation. The legacy she thought lost had been reclaimed and expanded into something that would outlast them all, a testament to enduring love, strategic foresight, and unwavering justice. My mother, Clara Ward, had been thrown out at midnight, barefoot and broken, a victim of unimaginable cruelty. She had returned in a Rolls-Royce, armed with evidence and unshakable dignity, a force to be reckoned with. And now, standing in the nursery, watching her children sleep, she understood the final, profound truth her father had tried to teach her. Victory isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so strong, so purposeful, so filled with love and justice, that their attempts to destroy you become mere footnotes in a much larger, more meaningful story. My brothers stirred, reached for each other across their cribs, their tiny hands finding comfort in each other's presence. A beautiful, innocent symbol of the connection my mother had fought so hard to protect. My mother smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, turned off the light, and closed the door softly. Tomorrow she would wake up and continue the work, helping women find their own paths from humiliation to triumph, from despair to empowerment. But tonight, she simply existed in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had done more than survive. She had transformed suffering into purpose, pain into power, and midnight rain into a legacy that would shelter generations to come. The storm was truly over. The sun had risen. And Clara Ward, once discarded like garbage, now stood as living proof that patience, preparation, and unwavering dignity could overcome any betrayal, any humiliation, any attempt to break a woman who refused to stay broken. Her journey was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a spiritual awakening that had not only saved her, but had become a guiding light for countless others. The mansion, once a symbol of her pain, was now a sanctuary, a home filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a future built on justice and compassion. But the world, as my mother knew, was vast and full of shadows. What new challenges, what unforeseen opportunities lay beyond the walls of her sanctuary, waiting for her to discover. The quiet satisfaction that settled over my mother's life was not a passive contentment, but an active, vibrant peace, fueled by purpose. The Ward Foundation, her father's ultimate gift, became the living embodiment of his foresight and her resilience. Each morning, as the sun streamed through the mansion windows, illuminating the joyful chaos of my brother's playtime, my mother felt a renewed sense of energy, a spiritual calling to continue the work. The stories of the women they helped at the foundation were varied, yet each echoed a familiar theme of betrayal, manipulation, and the desperate struggle for dignity. My mother, with Jessica's unwavering support, became a beacon for these women, guiding them through the labyrinthine legal system, offering not just expertise, but profound empathy, born from her own crucible of suffering. She learned that true empowerment wasn't just about winning in court. It was about rebuilding shattered spirits, fostering self-worth, and creating a community where women felt seen, heard, and believed. The foundation hosted workshops on financial literacy, emotional resilience, and strategic planning, teaching women the very tools my mother had used to reclaim her life. These weren't just legal battles. They were spiritual awakenings, moments where women realized their inherent power, often dormant under years of abuse. My mother's own journey, shared with raw honesty and profound vulnerability, became a powerful narrative that resonated deeply, transforming abstract legal concepts into tangible hope. She saw herself in every woman who walked through their doors, and in turn, they saw a reflection of their own potential for triumph. The foundation's success, however, did not go unnoticed by those who preferred the shadows. While Marcus had seemingly retreated into his self-imposed exile, the world of power and wealth was still a complex web of connections. My mother knew that true security required constant vigilance, a spiritual awareness of potential threats. She continued to work closely with Margaret, expanding the foundation's network, building alliances with other organizations dedicated to social justice. They understood that systemic change was a long game, a marathon, not a sprint, and that every small victory contributed to a larger, more equitable future. My father's meticulous planning had provided the initial shield, but my mother's active engagement was forging a new, stronger armor for countless others. One day, a new case arrived at the foundation, one that struck a particularly resonant chord with my mother. A young black woman named Nia, a single mother of two, had been systematically exploited by a powerful real estate developer. He had promised her a stake in a community housing project, leveraging her family's ancestral land, only to attempt to seize it all, leaving her and her children homeless. The developer, a man named Sterling Thorne, was known for his ruthless tactics and his seemingly impenetrable legal team. As my mother listened to Nia's story, she felt a familiar fire ignite within her, a righteous indignation that transcended mere legal obligation. This wasn't just a case. It was a battle for legacy, for community, for the very soul of a family. "He thinks he can just take what's not his," Nia said, her voice trembling, but with a spark of defiance in her eyes. "He thinks because I'm a black woman, a single mother, I have no power." My mother leaned forward, her gaze steady, her voice calm and resolute. "He's wrong, Nia. You have power. You have a legacy, and we are going to help you reclaim it. We will document everything, just as my father taught me. We will build an unassailable case, brick by brick, truth by truth." Jessica, who had grown into a formidable lawyer under my mother's mentorship, began to outline the legal strategy, her voice sharp and confident. This case, my mother knew, would be different. It wasn't just about financial assets. It was about cultural heritage, about the spiritual connection to land, about a community's right to thrive. The battle against Sterling Thorne was fierce, drawing parallels to my mother's own fight against Marcus. Thorne used his vast resources to intimidate, to spread misinformation, to try and break Nia's spirit. But my mother, remembering her own journey, stood firm. She rallied community leaders, engaged local media, and meticulously exposed Thorne's predatory practices. The foundation's network, built on trust and shared purpose, proved invaluable. They unearthed historical documents, gathered witness testimonies from other families Thorne had exploited, and meticulously documented every deceptive maneuver. The fight became a public spectacle, a David and Goliath story that captivated the city, much like my mother's own initial triumph. This time, however, my mother was not just the protagonist. She was the architect of justice, the strategist guiding the fight. The spiritual weight of this battle was immense, a testament to the enduring power of community and the unwavering pursuit of what is right. But Sterling Thorne was a formidable opponent, deeply entrenched in the city's power structures. Would my mother's strategy, honed by her own past, be enough to overcome such a powerful and ruthless adversary? Or would Nia's fight prove to be an even greater challenge than anything my mother had faced before? The battle against Sterling Thorne quickly escalated into a full-blown war, not just in the courtrooms, but in the court of public opinion. Thorne, a man accustomed to operating in the shadows, found himself exposed to the harsh glare of scrutiny, a position he clearly detested. He unleashed his formidable legal team, attempting to bury Nia and the Ward Foundation under mountains of paperwork, frivolous lawsuits, and thinly veiled threats. He tried to discredit Nia, painting her as an opportunist, a manipulator, a woman trying to exploit her ancestral land for personal gain. He even attempted to smear my mother's reputation, suggesting that the Ward Foundation was merely a front for her own personal vendettas, a desperate attempt to undermine her credibility and the spiritual integrity of her mission. But my mother, having walked this path before, was unshakable. She understood that Thorne's tactics were born of fear, a desperate attempt to maintain control as his carefully constructed empire began to show cracks. She worked tirelessly with Jessica, meticulously dissecting every legal maneuver, anticipating his next move. They leveraged the Foundation's growing network, mobilizing community activists, local journalists, and even sympathetic politicians who had been quietly observing Thorne's predatory practices for years. The story of Nia and her ancestral land became a rallying cry, a symbol of resistance against corporate greed and systemic injustice. My mother ensured that every step of the legal process was transparent. Every document filed, every testimony given, was shared with the public, transforming a private legal battle into a powerful movement for social change. The emotional toll was immense, but my mother drew strength from Nia's unwavering spirit and the support of her chosen family. Mrs. Chen, with her quiet wisdom, often brought homemade meals to the Foundation, offering comfort and spiritual sustenance. Margaret, ever the pragmatist, provided strategic counsel, reminding my mother to remain focused on the legal facts, even as the emotional stakes soared. Patricia Gonzalez, from the Women's Empowerment Coalition, amplified their message, ensuring that Nia's story reached a national audience, drawing parallels to other communities fighting similar battles. My mother, in turn, found a deeper connection to her father's legacy, understanding that his foresight had not just protected her, but had provided the very resources needed to fight for others who lacked a voice. This was the true meaning of turning pain into purpose, of transforming personal suffering into collective liberation. The climax of the legal battle came during a heated public hearing, where Thorne's lawyers attempted to invalidate Nia's claim to the ancestral land, arguing that the historical documents were ambiguous and that Nia lacked the financial resources to develop the property responsibly. Thorne himself, a man of imposing stature and a condescending smirk, took the stand, exuding an air of unassailable power. He spoke of progress, of economic development, of bringing modernity to a neglected community, subtly implying that Nia and her family were obstacles to progress. His testimony was smooth, polished, designed to appeal to the traditional sensibilities of the older judge presiding over the case. But my mother and Jessica were ready. Jessica, with a quiet ferocity, cross-examined Thorne, meticulously exposing inconsistencies in his development plans, revealing how his proposed project would displace hundreds of families, and demonstrating his history of broken promises to other communities. Then, my mother took the stand, not as a lawyer, but as a witness, a powerful voice for justice. She spoke of the spiritual connection to land, of the importance of cultural heritage, of the inherent right of a community to self-determination. She presented irrefutable evidence, meticulously compiled by the Foundation, showing how Thorne had systematically undervalued Nia's land, how he had attempted to coerce her into signing away her rights, and how his entire development project was built on a foundation of deceit and exploitation. The most powerful moment came when my mother played a series of recorded phone calls, secretly obtained by the Foundation's investigators, where Thorne, in his arrogance, boasted to his associates about how easily he would crush Nia and acquire her land for pennies on the dollar. His voice, filled with contempt and greed, echoed through the silent courtroom, a chilling testament to his true character. The judge, who had initially seemed swayed by Thorne's polished presentation, listened with a darkening expression, his face a mask of growing indignation. The recordings were the final, undeniable nail in Thorne's coffin, exposing his true intentions and shattering his carefully constructed image. The public gallery, packed with Nia's family and community members, erupted in a collective gasp, then a wave of quiet, triumphant murmurs. Thorne's face, once smug, went pale, his eyes darting nervously around the room, realizing his downfall was imminent. The spiritual battle for justice had reached its crescendo, and the truth, meticulously documented and powerfully presented, was finally prevailing. But even with this overwhelming evidence, the wheels of justice could turn slowly. What would be the judge's final ruling? And how would this victory resonate beyond the courtroom, impacting the lives of Nia and her community for generations to come? The judge's ruling came swiftly, a decisive blow that reverberated through the courtroom and beyond. He not only dismissed Sterling Thorne's claims, but also issued a permanent injunction, prohibiting him from ever attempting to acquire Nia's ancestral land again. Furthermore, He ordered Thorne to pay substantial damages to Nia and her family, recognizing the emotional distress and financial hardship he had inflicted. The judge's voice, firm and resolute, condemned Thorne's predatory practices, emphasizing the importance of protecting vulnerable communities and upholding the spiritual significance of heritage. It was a monumental victory, not just for Nia, but for every woman in every community that had ever been exploited by powerful, unscrupulous individuals. The courtroom erupted in a wave of applause, quickly silenced by the bailiff, but the joy and relief were palpable, a powerful current flowing through the room. Nia, tears streaming down her face, embraced my mother, her gratitude profound and overwhelming. "You saved us, Clara," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved our home, our legacy." My mother held her close, feeling the weight of Nia's relief, the spiritual connection forged in shared struggle. "Your strength saved you, Nia," my mother corrected gently. "We just helped you find your voice." The victory was a testament to the power of collective action, to the unwavering belief that justice, when pursued with patience and strategy, could indeed triumph over even the most entrenched forms of power and greed. It was a moment that solidified the Ward Foundation's mission, proving that my father's legacy was not just about personal protection, but about empowering entire communities. The news of Thorne's defeat spread like wildfire, becoming a national headline. My mother and Nia were invited to speak on major news channels, their story captivating audiences across the country. My mother, with Nia by her side, articulated the Foundation's vision, advocating for stronger legal protections for marginalized communities and highlighting the importance of preserving cultural heritage. She spoke of the spiritual resilience of Black women, of the power of community, and of the profound impact of strategic, patient advocacy. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals and organizations to join the fight for social justice. The Ward Foundation became a national model, its approach to combining legal expertise with community empowerment lauded as groundbreaking. Back at the mansion, life continued its beautiful, purposeful rhythm. My twin brothers, now toddlers, filled the halls with their laughter and boundless energy, their innocence a constant source of joy and inspiration for my mother. She watched them play, knowing that the world they would inherit was slowly, painstakingly, being shaped by the battles she fought, by the legacy her father had entrusted to her. The mansion, once a symbol of her pain, was now a vibrant hub of activity, a place where justice was planned, where hope was nurtured, and where the spirit of empowerment thrived. It was a home, a sanctuary, and a powerful symbol of transformation. My mother continued to lead the Ward Foundation with unwavering dedication, expanding its reach, establishing new programs, and mentoring a new generation of lawyers and activists. Jessica Chun, now a senior attorney, became her right hand, sharing her vision and her passion for justice. Margaret Hale remained a trusted advisor, her wisdom and strategic brilliance invaluable. Mrs. Chen, with her quiet presence and comforting meals, continued to be a beloved figure in their lives, a reminder of the simple, profound kindness that had sustained my mother in her darkest hour. The circle of support, forged in adversity, grew stronger with each passing day, a testament to the enduring power of human connection. One evening, as my mother tucked my brothers into bed, she reflected on her journey. From the cold, rainy night of her expulsion to the national stage, she had walked a path of unimaginable challenges and profound triumphs. She had learned that true power came not from wealth or status, but from integrity, from purpose, and from an unwavering commitment to justice. Her father's plan had not just saved her, it had transformed her into a force for good, a guardian of dignity for others. She whispered her nightly mantra to my sleeping brothers, her voice filled with love and conviction. "You are loved, you are protected, and you will always know that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, documenting everything, and making sure nobody can knock you down twice." The world outside was still imperfect, still fraught with injustice, but my mother, armed with her father's legacy and her own indomitable spirit, was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that her purpose was clear, her path illuminated by the light of justice and compassion. But the journey of transformation is never truly complete. What new insights, What deeper understanding of her own spiritual strength would my mother uncover as she continued to build her father's legacy? And how would her own story continue to inspire the generations to come? The years that followed saw the Ward Foundation flourish beyond my mother's wildest dreams, becoming a national powerhouse for social justice. Its impact was undeniable, its reach extending far beyond the initial vision. My mother, now a respected figure on the national stage, continued to lead with the same quiet strength and strategic brilliance that had defined her personal journey. She had built a team of dedicated professionals, each one committed to the Foundation's mission, each one inspired by her unwavering spirit. The mansion, once a symbol of her pain, was now a vibrant hub of activity, a place where hope was rekindled and futures were rebuilt. My twin brothers grew, their laughter echoing through the halls, a constant reminder of the profound love that fueled my mother's every endeavor. My mother often spoke of her father, Samuel Ward, not just as the architect of her protection, but as a spiritual guide whose wisdom continued to illuminate her path. She understood that his meticulous planning was not born of cynicism, but of a deep, abiding love and a profound understanding of human nature, both its darkness and its potential for light. His legacy, once a secret, was now a public testament to the power of foresight and the enduring strength of family bonds. She carried his spirit in every decision she made, every woman she helped, every battle she fought. It was a sacred trust, a spiritual inheritance that transcended material wealth. One crisp autumn afternoon, a letter arrived at the Foundation, bearing a familiar yet unexpected return address, Marcus Ward. My mother's heart gave a small, involuntary lurch, a ghost of past pain, but she opened it with a calm she had painstakingly cultivated over the years. Inside was not a legal threat, but a handwritten note, simple and stark. He wrote of his journey, of the years of therapy, of the slow, painful process of confronting his own demons. He spoke of the emptiness he had felt, the profound regret, and the dawning realization that true power lay not in control or material possessions, but in genuine connection and selfless love. He admitted that my mother's unexpected act of grace, her refusal to let him simply walk away from his responsibilities, had been the catalyst for his transformation. He asked for nothing, offered no excuses, only expressed a humble desire to be a decent father to my brothers, if they would ever allow it. He acknowledged that he might never fully earn their forgiveness, but he was committed to trying, to showing up, to being present in a way he never had before. My mother read the letter several times, her emotions a complex tapestry of past hurt and a burgeoning, cautious hope. She consulted with Margaret, with Jessica, with Mrs. Chen. They all agreed. True change was rare, but not impossible. And my mother, guided by her father's philosophy of turning pain into purpose, knew what she had to do. She arranged a meeting, not in a courtroom, but in a neutral, public park, a place of open spaces and new beginnings. My brothers, now 7 years old, were there, playing innocently on the swings. Marcus arrived, looking older, humbler, his eyes holding a vulnerability she had never seen before. He spoke to my brothers with a quiet sincerity, not of grand promises, but of small, consistent efforts. He talked about helping them with their homework, teaching them to ride bikes, being there for their school plays. He understood that he had to earn their trust, one small, consistent act at a time. My mother watched, a silent observer, a profound sense of peace settling over her. This was not a complete reconciliation, not a sudden erasure of the past, but a tentative step towards a different future, a future where her children might, one day, have a father who was truly present. The journey of Clara Ward, my mother, became a living testament to the power of spiritual resilience, strategic foresight, and the transformative potential of grace. She had not only reclaimed her own life and protected her children, but had built a legacy that extended far beyond her personal story. The Ward Foundation continued to thrive, empowering countless women to find their voices, to reclaim their dignity, and to build lives free from manipulation and fear. My mother, standing tall and resolute, became a symbol of hope, a living embodiment of her father's profound wisdom. That true strength lies not in never falling, but in rising again, stronger and more purposeful, transforming personal pain into a beacon of light for the world. Her story, a tapestry woven with threads of betrayal, resilience, and profound love, continued to inspire, a timeless narrative of justice and empowerment. The storm had passed, the sun had risen, and in its golden light, a new world, built on compassion and unwavering dignity, continued to unfold, one purposeful step at a time. What new challenges and triumphs awaited my mother and the Ward Foundation as they continued to champion justice, and how would the ripple effect of her courage continue to shape the lives of generations to come? The story, like life itself, was far from over, an ongoing testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.